Good evening, everybody. You may be seated. Thank you. Anyway, good evening, everybody, and I'd like to welcome all the members to the Council meeting on the 28th of February 2024. Can I ask members when speaking to speak clearly, directly into the microphone? This will enable members and members of the public to hear. Can I remind members and members of the public gallery to place their mobile phones to silent and to stand where possible when speaking? Can I remind members to remain seated at the end of the meeting until I have risen to conclude the meeting? Can I also remind those members who wish to speak this evening to keep their hands up until they're acknowledged by the Chief Exec? To remind members, the meeting is being live streamed, and we welcome the members of the public in the gallery watching and listening to the council meeting tonight. I would also like to remind all members of the council's adopted code of conduct for councillors, which agreed to and are expected to be adhered to. Can I ask members and members of the public to put all their mobiles on silent? I will remind members that I will not tolerate improper behaviour or discourtesy excuse me, in this chamber. Members should be respectful of each other and behave properly in conducting the council's business. If a member continues to disagree my ruling on these matters and cause a disturbance or behave improperly, I will, as the chair, suspend the meeting. I would like to ask the Reverend Canon Darren Barlow to lead us in prayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This year, if you haven't realised, is a leap year. And so today, the 28th of February, is not the last day of February, as there will unusually be a 29th of February tomorrow. A leap year, also known as an intercalary year, or a bisextile year, is a calendar year that contains an additional day compared to a common year. The 366th day is added to keep the calendar year synchronised with the astronomical year or seasonal year. The recognition of leap years goes back over 2,000 years. An astronomical year lasts slightly less than 365 days. The historic Julian calendar has 3 common years of 365 days, followed by a leap year of 366, by extending February to 29 days rather than 28. The Gregorian calendar, the world's most widely used civil calendar, makes a further adjustment for the small error in the Julian algorithm. Each year has 366 days instead of 365. This extra leap day occurs in each year that is in a multiple of 4, except for years evenly divisible by 100, but not by 400. Now, if you're completely confused by all of this, I suspect that you are not alone. And I wanted to mention leap years not to confuse, but to encourage some creative thinking outside the box. In Britain and Ireland, women may propose marriage only in leap years, so it is said. And while it's been claimed that this tradition was initiated by St. Patrick in the 5th century Ireland, this is dubious, I understand, as the tradition was not widely known before the 19th century. But in 1288, by complete contrast, Queen Margaret of Scotland passed a law, when aged only 5 and living in Norway, that required fines to be levied on a marriage proposal if it was refused by a man, and compensation was deemed to be a pair of leather gloves, a single rose, £1, or a great big kiss. And so I'm not expecting there to be lots of marriage proposals tomorrow, and I suspect not many great big kisses at tonight's council chamber. But I would encourage you to think outside the box, to be creative, to come up with different ideas and different ways of approaching what are very significant and very serious challenges. So think about how you might act creatively as councillors and collectively as a wider council as you journey through this evening's very challenging and demanding agenda. And so a short prayer. Father God, we commit this meeting to you and our ongoing service to the people of this great borough of Thurrock. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Barlow. That was delightful, and I'm waiting for another proposal, but hey-ho. Or a kiss. I doubt I'll even get either, but hey-ho. Right, apologies from absence. I have not received any apologies, and are there any apologies from absence from either the leaders, no, or anyone else? Thank you. Minutes, there are two... Thank you, Councillor Manuel. There are two sets of minutes to approve this evening, and I move that the minutes of the meeting of the 31st of January 2024 Extraordinary Council be approved as a correct record as shown on pages 11 and 12 of the agenda. Are all members in agreement with this? Is there anyone against? No, you all agreed. These minutes are approved. I now move that the minutes of the meeting of the 31st of January 2024 Council be approved as a correct record as shown on page 13 to 22 of the agenda. Are all members in agreement? Thank you, members. Is there anyone against the minutes? Councillor Spate? Right, thank you. These minutes are approved. I have not agreed to any urgent items of business today. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest to be made? Thank you. Announcements on behalf of the Mayor and the Leader of the Council. Before I invite the Leader of the Council to speak, I would like us to take a moment and remember the Thurrock's fallen of World War II, as found on page 7 of the agenda. Horn, Dennis H. Wakefield, Charles T. Chapel, James. King Albert, William. Potter, Edwin. Binks, Alice Louise. Appleyard, Gilbert Owing. Austin, Archibald J.C. Thank you. I would just like to say how delighted I am that we've got the official portrait of His Majesty the King Charles III and has been sent to us and is now displayed in this chamber. And I would like on our behalf to wish him a very, very speedy recovery and that of... Thank you. I'll now invite the Leader to make his announcements. Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since last full council, in partnership with the Department of Transport and other councils, we've launched a new initiative to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour on our railways. We secured £490,000 from the Department of Transport for our new transport safety officers, and Thurrock truly is leading the way on this initiative. Our new transport safety officers will help make our trains safer and will have the authority to hand out fixed penalty notices for crime and antisocial behaviour. We also launched a joint operation with Essex Police to tackle dangerous drivers and car cruising in West Thurrock. Officers are using a mobile CCTV van to enforce the public space protection orders, and officers recently seized 4 cars for not having insurance or driving dangerously, fined a driver for breaching a PSPO and reported a driver for a red light offence. They also gave out 4 warnings on antisocial behaviour matters. This operation helps make West Thurrock safer for residents, and I hope that residents and members are assured that we and the police are taking antisocial behaviour seriously. Finally, Madam Mayor, to update members on the ferry crossing between Tilbury and Gravesend. Unfortunately, we heard today that Jetstream have decided not to continue running the service from Tilbury to Gravesend. I would like to reassure members that we will be making every effort to ensure that a new ferry service is found, a new supplier rather, is found for this ferry service, so that this important service, this historical service, can continue to run between Tilbury and Gravesend.
Thank you, Leader. With my announcements, I've got to say I'm very aware that it's a very long agenda this evening. So about halfway through, I'm going to call for a comfort break because I think we'll need one. Questions for members of the public. I will now take 3 questions from the public which have been submitted and accepted by the monitoring officer. These are set out on pages 23 of the agenda. For the benefit of the recording of this meeting, I would ask that the questionnaire read out their question when asked to do so. I would also inform the questioner that any supplementary questions they may ask should not take the form of a statement and must be related to the original question or the answer that is given. So, welcome and good evening to Ms. Hattle. Please make your way to the public speaker microphone. And would you like to read out your question? Thank you.
Hello. How much money has been spent via Section 106 on bus stops in East Tilbury, Linford and Horndon in the last 10 years, including bus shelters for future approved developments? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maney, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mrs. Hattle, for your question. Madam Mayor, 4 bus stops have been funded in East Tilbury in the last 10 years from 106 money, totalling £13,471.94.
Thank you, Councillor Maney. Ms. Hattle, would you like to propose a second supplementary question?
Yes, please. Do you feel that this was a good use of Section 106 money now these bus stops and shelters are unused?
Thank you. Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, it would have been at the time because there would have been bus services operated in East Tilbury. And as I've said many times before, as I hope very much that commercial services will once again connect to East Tilbury, Horndon and Alsett, I hope that money hasn't been spent in vain. But as I've always said, I think I say it at every meeting, it is open to any commercial operator to run services in East Tilbury should they want to. They don't need the council's permission. So I hope that they will be put to good use at some time in the future. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Hattle. If you'd like to return to public gallery. And could Ms. Byrne please make your way to the public gallery? From the public gallery to the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the extraordinary corporate overview and scrutiny meeting held on the 1st of November 2023, Councillor Snell stated that the Council's Transformational Fund contained £12 million. On the 14th of February 2024, Councillor Snell again stated at the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny meeting that the fund now stands at approximately £7.5 million. What is this money earmarked for now? Thank you.
Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Ms Byrne, for your question. The estimated balance at the end of this year is actually been revised down to up to £9 million. This will be carried into a transformational reserve, as shown on table 27 of the Capital Revenue, or the Cabinet Revenue Budget 2024-2025. The reserve is set aside to support the transformation of the council and to implement savings and service delivery for current and future years. This is a non-recurrent position.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms Byrne, would you like to pose a supplementary question?
Yes, please, thank you. Could I ask, what has the 4.5 million decrease in the fund been spent on? And can you please let us know, sorry, may I start again? I've missed a section out, I do apologise. Right. Back in 21 and up to July 22, during many meetings with and witnessed by councillors, directors and officers of the council, we were encouraged to use this fund to support the community asset transfer of the Thameside complex. We have since been informed verbally and not officially in writing by directors and officers that this fund is no longer available. I'd like to ask, what has the 4.5 million decrease in the fund been spent on? And can you please let us know if this fund is available for the transformational community asset transfer of the Thameside complex or not? And if not, why? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Byrne. Councillor Snell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I think that there's a little bit of confusion about this pot of money. This isn't anything to do with the Community Transformation Fund. This is a completely separate pot of money that has come into existence since the Section 114 notice. And this money is entirely down to transformational change within the council. So some spend to save bits and pieces that we're doing, some investment in IT, that kind of thing. This isn't anything to do with the previous pot you mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. Councillor, Mrs Byrne, would you like to return to the public gallery? Mrs Ramdini, please make your way to the public speaker microphone and read out your question.
Why is the council willing to pour more and more money into the project at Stamford Station, potentially borrowing 15 million to do this, according to recent reports, when they're cutting essential services for vulnerable residents of the borough?
Thank you. Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ms Randemi, for your question. To be clear, Madam Mayor, the Council hasn't committed to any further expenditure or borrowing in respect of Stamford Station. In fact, as has been announced publicly, we are undertaking a gateway review of the project to determine what the best steps forward, best steps are in order to take the project forward. In the fullness of time, that will culminate in a report that will go via the democratic process, and it will be for members to decide what the next steps are. But just to repeat, Madam Mayor, the Council has not at this stage committed to spending any more money on Stamford Station. Whether or not that, that changes at a later date, it may well do. But notwithstanding the funds that have already been spent, the Council has made no decision.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms Ramdini.
Yeah, thank you for your answer there. I did say potentially because I am aware that a decision hasn't been made yet. Is there a cut-off point, and I know this is hypothetical, but is there a cut-off point where the council could potentially say, look, no more? Again, from recent reports, I've read that, it's increased to 37. If it was to increase to 47 million, 57 million, 67 million, is there a cut-off point? I mean, I don't know how the council runs, so it's a genuine question.
Thank you. Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think as with any large project of this kind, the council will always have to carry out best value reviews, as we've done in the case of the Grays Underpass, for example. And certainly if it is the case that, the continuation of the scheme doesn't deliver value for money, then I think we would be obligated to review that. We can't endlessly spend money on a project which has already, cost a considerable amount of money. Personally speaking, I don't believe the council should ever have taken the risk that it did with Stamford Station. We should always have supported it, but we shouldn't have been the ones that led on that and took the risk that we did. So I can only speak personally. I do agree that if there may come a point where we have to decide not to persevere and look at other options. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Item 7, petitions for members of the public and councillors. Please be advised that in accordance with the councillors' petition scheme, one notice of a petition has been received. Good evening, Mr. Jessel. Please make your way to the public speaker microphone and read out your petition. You will have 3 minutes to speak to your petition. Thank you.
Good evening to all esteemed members of the Chamber. As the chairperson of the Gurdwara Grace, I'm honored to present this petition on behalf of Gurdwara Grace, which is signed by residents of different faiths and communities, as well as users of our community hall. This is our first petition that we are presenting in this chamber, and we hope and request that you will consider this petition positively. Gurdwara Grace, the Sikh temple, has been a place of worship and a cornerstone of unity and community cohesion since 1974. Throughout the years, our Gurdwara has remained dedicated to serving diverse communities of Thurrock, extending support to those in need during times of hardship and uncertainty. The Grace Community Hall was established in the year 2000. Different communities and faiths are using this hall for their prayers, services, and meetings, including weekly church services, Nepalese Gurkha community meetings, and IAG meetings, along with many other events. We also offer our space to our growing local Romanian community for their prayer services. Additionally, we use this hall for funeral prayers and vigils. The small strip of land in question, which is currently used for parking, is adjacent to the main entrance of our community hall. We really struggle to bring our funeral carts inside once the vehicles are parked at this strip, and most of the time we have to carry coffins on shoulders due to limited space. We have enclosed a letter from West & Co, our funeral directors, to support our petition. The local Sikh community has always positively contributed in almost every field of life in Thurrock, and we deserve a respectable funeral, and this handover of this land to us will enable this. Any potential sale of this small piece of land to commercial buyer for commercial use will create hurdles and obstacles to our right way to the main entrance of our community hall. Today, I come before you on behalf of the Sikh community, various other communities who uses this community hall, with the request to hand over this small piece of land to us, and we undertake to use this space for community purposes only. We would request the council to remove this as a commercial asset and designate it as a community asset. We kindly request the esteemed members of this chamber to consider our petition favorably. Your positive consideration will not only benefit the Sikh community, but also strengthen the diverse tapestry of Thurrock. In addition to our request, we would be honored to welcome any interested members of the chamber to visit the Gurdwara Grace and experience firsthand the spirit of community and service that drives our mission. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Naney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I firstly thank the petitioner and all those who have attended this evening to support this petition. I would begin by saying that I absolutely hear what you're saying and the message that you are trying to convey. Obviously, I can't give a decision tonight on the future of the land and how it will be disposed of. The only thing I think I do need to remind everybody of is the fact that the council does have a legal obligation to secure best value for any asset or land that it seeks to dispose of, and we have to keep that in mind in this case. I think it's also worth pointing out that there are other interested parties who have expressed an interest in acquiring the land, and we have to be open to their needs too. And it's important the council doesn't leave itself to challenge at a later stage if it doesn't, in its disposal of any asset, do so via a level playing field. I know that you have today, I believe, requested that the land be listed as an asset of community value, and obviously we'll get a decision to you on that in due course. As I say, Madam Mayor, I can't add any more. I certainly can't allude to a decision other than to say we'll certainly consider your petition, and I hope that in the fullness of time we can come to an agreement on the best way to dispose of the land, mindful always though that the council has to get best consideration for it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Maney. Mr Jessel, would you like to propose another question? Anything else? No? No. Thank you. If you'd like to return to your seat. Regarding the public gallery, I'm sure quite a few people are here this evening to hear this petition and to support it. You are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if you wish to go, that's fine, and you'll be able to go, and I'll wait till you've gone, if you see what I mean. No? You want to stay, or you can go? Thank you. How much do we want for it? Right, thank you everyone. Item 8, update report in respect of those petitions presented at the Council and Council officers. This report can be found on page 25 of the agenda and is information of the status of petitions handed in at the Council. Item 9, appointments to the committee and outside bodies and statutory and other panels. Leader, would you like or do you wish to make any changes to the appointments previously made? Thank you. Councillor Kent, would you like to? Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Spate? Thank you, Councillor Spate. Item 10, amendment to the polling place and station. Leader, would you please introduce the report, that can be found on pages 27 to 30. You have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You'll be pleased to know I won't be speaking for 5 minutes. I just draw members' attention to the recommendations that the members note that the new polling arrangements for Bellis Ward, polling district E2 and F, the new polling place is Bellis Park, Scout Hut, Faymore Gardens, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, do you wish to speak?
Only to say that we're happy to support the recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Would any member like to speak on this report? No? Thank you. Leader, presumably, do you want to sum up? Thank you, Leader. I will now proceed to recommendation that members note the new polling arrangements for the Bellis Ward, polling districts E2 and F. The new polling place is Bellis Park, Scout Hall, Faymore Gardens. Do members note the recommendation? Thank you, members. Item 11, update on appointment of the Interim Chief Finance Officer, Section 151 Officer. Leader, would you please introduce the report? The report can be found on pages 31 to 36. You have 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members will have on their desks in front of them a short CV for Dawn Calvert, who the Commissioners are proposing as the new Interim Chief Finance Officer and S151 Officer. I'm pleased and delighted to say that we have found this person, and Dawn, I think, will do an excellent job. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Kent, do you wish to speak?
Madam Mayor, again, to support the recommendation, Dawn Calvert comes with a really strong CV. She's going to be here as an interim for some time, which should help to give us the stability we need. Before I move on, though, I think I'd just like to thank Steve Mayor for his time as our acting Section 151 officer. And through you, Madam Mayor, Steve, thank you. You've made a real difference. I hope that the air in Bradford is to your liking. It's certainly closer to home, which will cut down on journey time. So Steve, thank you, and we all wish you well for the future.
Leader, would you like to sum up?
Only to endorse what the Leader of the Opposition has just said and to apologise for not thanking Stephen for all his hard work. Thank you, Stephen.
Actually, I should have allowed any other member to speak. So was another member wishing to speak to the item? No? So it's okay. Thank you, Leader. I will now proceed to the recommendation that full council note the decision of commissioners to appoint Dawn Calvert, Interim Chief Finance Officer, Section 151 Officer. Do members all note the recommendation? Thank you. We are, my goodness. Before I move on to the budget reports, please note the following items are removed from the agenda as they have been approved by Cabinet on 21st of February 2024. These are item 16, HRA rent setting, and item 20, revenue budget saving 2024 to 2025. In accordance with the Council's constitution, I will give the Leader and Councillor Kent, as well as Councillor Spate, their allotted time to speak on the budget. Members will be given the opportunity to speak and debate on each individual reported item. Leader, would you please introduce the budget? You have a maximum of 20 minutes to speak on this subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm assuming the Leader of the Opposition was shaking his head, hoping I wasn't going to actually speak for 20 minutes.
Madam Mayor, I don't think we're at that stage of the agenda. I think we're on item 12.
Look, I've turned it over. No. Councillor Kent and the leader and Councillor Spate. The reason we're doing it like this so that you can both speak, or all three of you can speak, as an overarching comments on what's happening, because it is so important that you do speak, and then we'll discuss each item as it comes up again. An overarching is a summary of what's coming up, and then we discuss each item. Councillor Spate, sorry.
Madam Mayor, if it helps for clarity, I think it is a legal requisite that we need to discuss the Section 25 report first, because it advises councillors of certain information. I then see no reason why I'm not quite sure where you wish the thing to speak, but it's broken down in so many things. You know, you're asking us to vote to make a speech about so many things that are varied. It wasn't where I was expecting to speak. But certainly, we must have the Section 25 report. That has to be. That's a legal issue, and I'm quite astonished that that has been ignored.
No, it hasn't. It was just the way that the councillor had been put. Section content and length of speeches. Speeches must be directed to the question under discussion of all personal and points of order. At the meeting of the council at which the authority's budget is proposed, the leader shall allow 20 minutes to set out his or her priorities or to the purpose of the budget, and a further 10 minutes to respond to any speech. The leader of the opposition shall be allowed 15 minutes to reply to the leader's speech, but not to the response. This doesn't exclude members or the two leaders and Councillor Spate from actually making other speeches, and this is in the Constitution, and this is what the monitoring officer is telling me and the Chief Executive Officer. Councillor Kent, perhaps you can clarify.
Madam Mayor, I really don't think I can clarify. I'm looking at an agenda where we have just finished item 11, update and appointment of interim CFO. Next item is item 12, the Section 25 report, to consider the Section 25 report. You seem to be suggesting that we're taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 items in one go. I'm at a loss to understand what it is that you're suggesting.
I'm actually going to ask the Chief Exec to see if he can explain it better than I, though I have been following the words I was given, so please forgive me. Over to you.
Madam Mayor, just to be clear, paragraph 19.8 C makes it clear in the Constitution that at a budget meeting, the leader and the leader of the opposition are able to make a contribution setting out their own views about the overall position, which is described in the Constitution as his or her priorities, or to propose the budget. They can do this for the time specified, as we've said. This is in addition to contributions that may be made during the particular items that are listed in the budget. So one does not exclude the other.
Councillor Spate.
I do apologise, Madam Mayor, but we keep getting reminded of the BVI report, which was quite explicit about the advice that we should be given and the advice that we should follow and the processes that we should follow. And you've just invited the leader of the Labour opposition and myself to speak about the budget. You've just invited us to speak about the budget. In the paperwork for tonight's meeting in front of us, it says here, under Section 25 of the Local Government Act 2003, there is a requirement for the Council's Chief Finance Officer to report to Council on the robustness of the estimates made for the purposes of the calculations of the budget and the adequacy of the proposed level of financial reserves. Now, if Councillor Jeffreys, Councillor Kent and myself are going to make reference to the budget in our speeches, we need to be sure, I believe, and if I'm wrong, but we need to be sure that those details that are in front of us are robust, which will be detailed in the Section 25 report, which will be presented to us before any discussions by the Senior Finance Section 151 officer. Seems plain as day to me. I don't know why we're changing it.
Again, I'll respond. There is no requirement for any member to speak. It is merely allowed for in the Constitution. The leader of the opposition and Councillor Spate may or may not wish to take up the opportunity, but it is nevertheless set out. The Section 25 report is a report of the Section 151 officer and lays a standing. You can debate that report and any subsequent report, and you can take a view at the end of all that and for each section about whether you support or don't support the individual recommendations. You're not being asked to draw your conclusions. You're being given the facility to make a contribution to the debate if you so wish to. It's in the Constitution, and we are reflecting what's in the Constitution.
I tell you what, could Councillor Kent, Councillor Spate and Councillor Jeffreys come up here and we'll have a quick chat? And I'll suspend the meeting if that's okay with everyone. Seat, please. Everyone else be quiet. Oh, I haven't got Councillor Kent. Councillor Spake, Councillor Kent, please, will you take your seats? Obviously, there has been some confusion in how the agenda has been laid out, how we have previously run the meetings, etc. And in the view of openness and fairness, I think we will go back to how we normally do it and discuss each one. Okay? And we're all in agreement with that. Thank you. Item 12, Councillor's Section 25 report. Yeah, you all know where it is. Councillor Snell, would you please introduce the report? You have 5 minutes to speak. Thank you, Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, this is the Section 25 report that is prepared by the Section 151 officer, stating whether or not the Council is able to fulfil its legal duties by setting a balanced budget. It considers the conditions and risks facing the Council, with a particular emphasis on the Section 114 notice and all that entails. It also looks at risks and challenges within the organisation itself, an under-resourced finance team and demand-led budgets in adults and children's social care being examples, as well as looking at external issues such as inflation, interest rates, etc. The report then lists the mitigation work being undertaken, not least the divestment of assets, with £636 million to be returned by the end of March and over £18 million in revenue savings, and the new systems put in place to prevent any future financial failings. The report finds that taking all of these measures into account, the proposed budget meets statutory requirements. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. Councillor Kent, do you wish to speak? And you have 4 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'll speak very briefly. I think everybody has read and considered the Section 25 report. In short term, it tells us that we're not yet on a path to sustainability by the end of the next 5-year period, that we'll still have a material debt of some 314 million, which is equivalent to 25% of our budget. As Councillor Snell says, it lists a whole range of risks, none of which should be a surprise to any of us. We know that the path to financial sustainability for the council is precarious. We know that to set a budget is one thing, but then to actually deliver that budget is another thing entirely. And I think we've had fair warning that it's going to be very, very difficult to bring this budget in next year, but it's something that we'll all be working hard to achieve.
Thank you, Councillor Councillor Kent, sorry. Would any other member like to speak? Councillor.
Yeah, I will also attempt to be as brief as I can. I think that just sums up why it was important that we dealt with this issue, because it is quite, I know that some members have not actually seen this, but that's their fault because it is there in black and white online at the very least. But it also shows, again, reports that are delivered late are not always as well read as they should be, a familiar failing within this council. But I think it's absolutely, to make it clear to the members of the public what this is about. The Commissioner's comment makes it quite clear that while we are able to set a budget this evening, based on the figures that will be put before us, those figures at this point in time are not cast in stone. There are still shortfalls and solutions to be found. So it goes to the point I was making earlier on about when we speak in general about the budget. The budget is, at this point in time, a best guess, as all budgets always are. But the fact that the government has said, we've got enough faith in you now to go ahead and find those savings. But everybody needs to be clear in the public gallery that we're not there even now. We're not there yet. We will get there, I hope, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for this report. As the financial catastrophe presided over by our Conservative colleagues continues to be laid bare, this report makes sobering reading and highlights that the Council is still in a very, very precarious financial position. As well as having to cut the current Council budget in half over the next 5 years, sell off all of our investments, likely all at a loss, and sell off great swathes of our assets, we will still have to go cap in hand to government to ask for funds to balance our budget each year. Even after all these measures have been taken, there is still a projected debt of over 300 million. That's a quarter of the Council's current annual revenue budget in 5 years' time. As if that wasn't enough, last-minute decisions by Conservative Cabinet have left officers scrambling to find an extra 1.7 million in savings just weeks before this budget set in Council. It really is a shambles. We're told that the Council Tax Hardship Fund will go as the Conservatives renege on their promise to protect those most in need. It also means that nearly 1 million in savings are yet to be identified as we come together to approve this year's budget. As usual, the Conservatives have kicked the can of financial responsibility down the road and a new cabinet will be left to deal with their shortfall. This, Madam Mayor, is the legacy of Conservative rule in Thurrock. I hope it's a long time before they're trusted to run the council again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other speakers? No. Thank you. Councillor Snell, would you like to sum up? Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to say that the Section 25 report is what it is, and it does, as both Councillor Kent and Councillor Spate highlight, the fact that, this is going to be a difficult year. As we go through these reports, we're going to find that we're not hiding from that, we're not shirking away from that. We are facing this head on. And I would just like to request that if members that are talking about questions actually talk about the report in hand, because obviously these issues are going to come up throughout the report. And if we keep getting long speeches about stuff that's coming up ahead of the time, then it's going to be a very long night indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll now proceed to the recommendation. 1, that the Council has regard to this report when making decisions about the calculation of the Council tax requirement. Do members agree with the recommendation? Thank you, members. Item 13, medium-term financial strategy. Councillor Snell, would you please introduce the report? You have 5 minutes to speak. Thank you, Councillor Snell.
And thank you, Madam Mayor. And as per my comment of a second ago, As you'll see in the report, the Council's financial position is challenging and will remain so for several years. Nonetheless, the position is forecast to improve considerably via the divestment of assets, the implementation of a tough savings programme, working differently and service delivery changes. As can be seen at the table, on table 1 at 1.3, the three financial indicators reflecting the improvement are all headed in the right direction. But, even so, all three are still short of target by 2029, and those figures are reflected in the final column. Again, contrary to popular belief, we're not shirking from anything. We're putting everything on the table. It says what it says. To achieve even these figures, we must hit a number of key deliverables. They're listed in 1.4, so I won't go over them here, but I will say that they are all challenging and will require lots of hard work in future years to achieve. Crucially, if any of the targets at 1.4 are not realised, savings to the same value and timelines would need to be delivered. If not, the financial position of the Council will worsen and we will not realise even the final figures shown in Table 1. Clearly, a wide range of improvements to financial management are needed. Some are in progress, others are planned and need to be addressed, along with an overarching need for a change programme to ensure consistent, innovative and high-quality financial services. By delivering everything set out in this report, the financial directions will be addressed and the position of the Council can improve and eventually achieve financial stability. I shall leave it there, Madam Mayor, and open for questions.
Thank you. Councillor Kent.
Madam Mayor, we're asked to approve the medium-term financial strategy, and frankly, we have no option this evening but to approve it. I echo actually what Councillor Snell has said. It is a very clear document. It's a clear strategy, and it lies everything out there for us to see. The particularly sobering table for me is table 3 on page 15, which tells us that we will need a capitalisation direction of 68 million this year, 56 million next year, 51 million the year after, and so on. At the moment, there is no clear route to us being able to set a budget without exceptional government support. That's something that we do need to address in whatever way we can, hopefully in less than the 5 years of the MTFS. However, I do welcome and will be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Is there any other member who would like to speak about it? No? That's fine. Councillor Snell, do you wish to sum up? You have 2 minutes.
That's fine, Madam Mayor. I thank Councillor Kent for his comments and would like to go to the recommendations.
I will now proceed to the recommendation. The Council approved the medium-term financial strategy and in doing so agree the financial targets summarised in paragraph 1.3, the financial assumptions deliverable as summarised at paragraph 1.4 to 1.7, that if any of the above targets or assumptions adversely vary, alternatives to the same timescale and value will need to be identified and implemented. The treatment of the MRP calculations is based on recent KC guidance and is subject to approval from the Council's auditors. There is an inherent risk that these numbers could change. Do members approve the recommendations? Thank you, members. We now move to item 14, Capital Strategy Programme 2024 to 2025. Councillor Snell, would you please introduce the report? You have 5 minutes to speak. Thank you, Councillor Snell.
And thank you, Madam Mayor.
What point is the point of order? Stand up, Councillor.
The fact that we go back to, yet again, a point that has been made many, many times. I was actually not going to approve that, but you didn't give me the opportunity. There's a recommendation. It should be a for, against, or an abstain. And you should read the recommendation out. Time and time and time again, we come back to this same lack of detail and lack of opportunity. You just said, does everybody agree? Yeah. It's not the way we do business. It's not the way we should be doing business. It's not a recordable way to do business. Will we not learn from what we've been told?
Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Spate. Item 14, Capital Strategy Programme 2025 to 2020. Hang on, can you just... Councillor Spillman, when you speak to me, do you think you could stand up and use your mic?
Councillor Spates indicated that he was not for the proposal, so therefore not everyone's in agreement, so therefore we must go to the vote, surely.
Yes, I totally take your point. Thank you, Councillor Spillman. Right, so members do not approve, so could all those who approve the recommendations raise their hands, please? Thank you. All those who do not approve the recommendations, could you raise your hands? To all those who wish to abstain, can you raise your hands? So I have 2 abstentions and the rest of you approve. Thank you. Capital Strategy Programme 224 to 225. Councillor Snell, would you please introduce your report? You have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report sets out the Council's capital strategy from 24-25 to 28-29. Again, this has been formulated in accordance with government directions and the Improvement and Recovery Plan, all underpinned by the need to reduce borrowing and the cost of borrowing on revenue budgets, especially the General Fund. We have carried out reviews of the previously approved programme and the current programme to establish what should no longer be included. We then extended the programme to cover 5 and not 3 years and identified areas of improvement in the management of that programme. The capital programme approved by full council in March 2023 had capital spending totalling £202 million over 3 years. This had to be expanded to £275 million by the first quarter of 23-24, of which £155 million was to be funded from borrowing and a further £121 million from external funding. Appendix 1 shows a summary of the then revised capital programme. In addition, previously approved bids totalling £119 million were put on hold before March 2023 and not included in the capital programme of £202 million. The funding of the £119 million of capital projects included £62.9 million of borrowing, £51.5 million worth of grants and £4.5 million of capital receipts. These are shown in Appendix 2. After reviewing the capital programme, we have removed £101.4 million from the budgets in Appendix 3 to reduce capital expenditure and so comply with Section 114, to reduce reliance on borrowing. We've formally removed the £119 million of capital projects that were on hold, and we formally removed capital projects that have not yet started. Therefore, and in summary, it is proposed that total general fund capital spending between 2024-25 and 28-29 is limited to £115.8 million, and total HRA capital spending between the same period is set at £175.1 million. Again, there is more details in the report, Madam Mayor, but I'll leave it there for questions.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. Councillor Kent.
Madam Mayor, as we kind of move down that path to sustainability, we've concentrated an awful lot on the various levers that we have to pull. Council tax increase, revenue savings, divestment of our investments, selling land and property. And I think the one that has been sometimes overlooked is the capital programme. It's dropping debt, it's dropping those projects that this council can no longer afford. And in many ways, it's one of the most depressing items we have here this evening. And I don't want to go and read the whole list. But things like the east-facing slips from the A13 that we've been campaigning for 25 years are now dropped. A relatively small amount of money for air quality modelling has been dropped. The money for the Tilbury Integrated Medical Centre has gone. The Grays South Regeneration and Underpass scheme has gone. It's a really sobering document, and as I say, I think it's an element of our improvement journey, our journey to financial sustainability that has been somewhat overlooked. It makes sobering reading.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Is there any other member who would like to speak? Councillor Spate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will, again, attempt to be very brief. I would echo, I was going to say some of what Councillor Kent said. This is, again, another item that I am going to abstain on because some parts of it I see merit in, some parts I do not. And when I speak later on, I will try and explain why and what I mean. So that's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. But I think this particular segment of tonight's meeting just shows how we have ripped the heart and soul out of this borough. We have identified things that this borough needs. And I think too rashly, too quickly, and without enough forethought, and that is a voice that a comment I do know is shared in some higher echelons of this council. We have made these decisions, but it's going to go through, it's going to be what it is, but I think this is a very, very, very sad landmark point in this council's history, that these key projects have been thrown out because of previous incompetence. It's, you know, it's just shameful, really, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kieran.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I acknowledge this report and welcome some of the lessons which are appearing to be learned as a result of the government intervention that we're all engaging with. Of course, the recent headlines have all been around the billions of pounds lost in the flawed and reckless investment strategy. However, this report, I think, shines a light on the issues which have been in the way that the council has actually been run up to the point of intervention. For example, Thurrock's residents will welcome the fact that, and I quote from the report, any changes to the capital programme should require full council approval whilst ensuring that external funding can be relied upon. This sentence on page 2 really highlights two fundamental flaws of recent times: a lack of transparency and a careless disregard for the money. There is reassurance now that capital projects must be agreed in the open and with the money securely behind it. The projects which have been put on hold include things that have rumbled on for years and in some cases have actually made local residents' lives and local business operations more difficult. In my own ward, the Grays Underpass has been a source of concern for residents worried about the disruption to their daily lives, and to some businesses on the high street fretting about whether they would even exist once the works commenced. Businesses cannot operate in such an uncertain climate. Local residents aware of other infrastructure failed projects were dreading the inevitable delays that would happen. In Stamford-le-Hope, the issues around the transparency and funding for the rail station interchange have been a part of daily life for years and years. Residents are well versed in the travails of the project. I look forward to discussing the motion about the subject later this evening. It is probably the best example of the door closing after the horse has bolted that has ever been seen. I could go on and on about each and every individual project put on hold, but in the spirit of this report and with the Commissioner approval of it, I will look to the future for our council, a future where our council asks itself what it should and shouldn't be doing in Thurrock. Should our council be a builder of underpasses, a designer of rail station interchanges, a widener of A-roads? As the council transitions away from the past, its new mission must be as an enabler, a council that enables the community to do more for itself, a council which taps into the skills that individual residents, neighbourhoods, community groups, charities and businesses all have. In short, a council which is a convener, bringing all the skills and talents of Thurrock together for the betterment of Thurrock. There are good models out there, the Preston model being perhaps the most famous model in local government. However, it will be up to whoever runs Thurrock after May to begin to build a truly Thurrock model. I look forward to all of us working together to achieve this.
Thank you, Councillor. I will now ask Councillor Snell to sum up, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your comments. Again, I'm going to agree with some of the comments. I mean, there's not a councillor here that wants to remove projects from the capital programme, things that Thurrock have needed for a long time, but we are where we are. And I think Councillor Kerrin hit an optimistic note, and I'm going to agree with that completely. We've been saying this for the best part of a year now. We are where we are. What's happened has happened. We've been trying our best to move on from that and look forward to the Thurrock of the future. Now, that for sure means that we're not going to be delivering a lot of the things ourselves anymore. But Councillor Kerrin is right, Madam Mayor. There are plenty of outfits out there that are willing and probably prepared to come in and carry out some of these things for us. And it is up to us as a council to go out to these people and to encourage, companies to come to Thurrock and see what they can do for us. You're right, we might not be the best people to build an underpass, but I bet there's someone out there that is, and we can encourage that. There's all sorts of things we can do positively rather than constantly hark back to what's happened already. We know that. We've got to draw a line somewhere, and now we've got to move forward. I know it's difficult, I know it's hard, but we've got to get there eventually, and I completely agree with Councillor Kerrin. We've got to do it together. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now proceed to the recommendation. The Council approve A, the revised capital programme and 5-year capital programme for 2024-25 to 28 to 29 as set out in this report. B, that the capital projects currently on hold totalling 1,019 million are included in the capital programme and the associated borrowing of the 62.9 million is not required. The capital schemes that have not started, totaling to 3.3 million, are also formally confirmed as removed from the capital programme, and the associated borrowing of 3.3 million is not required, and those schemes assessed and considered no longer necessary, totaling to 60.1 million, are confirmed as removed from the capital programme, and the associated borrowing of 56.5 million is not required. C, the proposed financing of the capital programme. D, delegation to the Interim Director of Finances 151 in consultation with the Commissioners. All decisions surrounding the financing of expenditure within the revised capital programme in a manner which achieves the most effective use of the Council's resources. E, that any future changes to the capital programme should be approved by Council whilst ensuring the external funding is able to be used in a timely manner, with any new borrowing requirements subject to the Commissioner's approval. F, that the Capital Programme Board review and receive updates on the action plans out in place to address the further improvements identified and to note progress on the continued delivery of these improvements. Could councillors raise their hands if they approve this recommendation? Thank you. Is there anyone who is against the motion? Is there anyone who wishes to abstain? 3. I've got 3. Lovely. Thank you, councillors. Right. Item 15. Councillor Snell, it's the HRI business plan. Councillor Snell, would you please introduce the report? You have 5 minutes to speak. Thank you, councillor.
I don't think I really needed a seat tonight, did I? I should just stand up all night. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Section 76 of the Local Government and Housing Act 1989 requires local authorities to set a budget for the HRA which is based on best assumptions, avoids a deficit and keeps the HRA under review. This business plan does that. The revenue business plan over a 5-year period projects a gross income of £360.66 million and a gross expenditure of £350.814 million, thus generating a surplus of £9.5 million. The HRA Capital Programme provides for a total capital investment of £175.069 million over the 5-year period, of which £83.77 million relates to existing properties and £91.291 million relating to new developments and property purchases. Over the 30-year business plan period, £646.214 million is to be spent on the HRA Capital Programme. Now, this business plan is based on two major assumptions. The first is that the Secretary of State will give permission to Thurrock Council to borrow to fund HRA development schemes. If this is not forthcoming, the matter will be reported back to Council and Cabinet. The second is that the current rules around right to buy Section 11 retention agreement in place, around the right to buy retention agreement in place will apply, i.e. Thurrock Council will only be able to utilise the right to buy receipts on the additional units above the existing units within both Blackshots and Teviot developments. Thurrock Council has, nevertheless, submitted a request to the Secretary of State for special dispensation to borrow to fund the development schemes and property purchases which will allow the first point above to be addressed, and for permission to utilise the maximum allowable right to buy receipts on the schemes, which would impact on the second point. But if the government does not give approval for the right to buy receipts, £31 million of those will be repaid to government. Yet again, Madam Mayor, there's plenty in the report, so I will take questions if there are any.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, do you want to speak? No. Councillor Worrell. Thank you. Councillor Worrell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report was presented to Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which unfortunately I could not attend due to a family emergency. I checked the minutes online and the report went through with no questions and no comments, which disappointed me. With this in mind, please, Madam Mayor, can you indulge me for a few minutes? A major chunk of this report is statutory and looks at rent setting, the income from rents and how we spend that money. This is signed and agreed by Cabinet, so I will not focus on that particular element. Yes, we do need to increase the rents, and for that we must continue to offer a good service, keeping the staff costs down at all times. They're particularly high in this portfolio, and investing in all that we can in maintaining the diminishing stock levels. We need to increase the numbers of homes that we inspect and prepare for what could be very difficult times dealing with the damp and mould legislation. This report indicates that we are looking to do this, and I really welcomed that within the report. I am confident that although they are a huge casualty of this intervention, housing will continue to perform the day-to-day delivery to a very good standard. An area I do need to comment on is housing supply. This is not really a business plan for increasing our housing footprint. Over recent years, we had a housing pipeline element to this report to build 500 new council homes across Thurrock to ease the strain on the ever-growing housing waiting list. This was in addition to the Blackshots flats being demolished and replaced with new builds. Sadly, we are in a different position now due to the government's intervention. There is no mention of the 500 new homes in this report. They are simply disappeared from the plan. The car parks and council-owned land will now be sold on to developers to pay down this council's debt. This is one area that has not had the spotlight shone on it, but it is one that will affect every person sitting on that housing list and waiting in a flat to move into a house. No matter how much we argued about what should or should not be built on some of those sites, I cannot be the only one here tonight who is absolutely gutted that we cannot build these much needed homes because we cannot borrow to build those 500 homes. Yes, we do have the Blackshots and Teviot sites, which we may be able to build on, but there is a Commissioner's comment on this report tonight that makes it very clear that even these two sites will only happen if we can demonstrate the value for money and get agreement from government to use the right to buy receipts and get a loan to build. So fingers crossed the Commissioners are in a good mood on the day they review the submission from the Housing Department to borrow against our HRA. This report does advise in the summary that millions of right to buy receipts are at risk And should we have to pay the money back, we will also need to find millions in interest too. It should be noted that if we are forced to return it, it goes straight back to the Treasury and it is not used to pay down our debt. Since this was printed, we now know that we cannot use the right to buy receipts to purchase the additional homes, which would have been used to support our temporary accommodation offer. But I do know that officers are busy pulling together an alternative offer that they are quietly confident will get agreement by the Commissioners. Madam Mayor, we do need to find a way to bring new affordable homes to Thurrock. If we cannot build them ourselves, we have to find a way of working collaboratively with housing associations and developers. Our residents deserve a home to call their own, and we need to play our part in making that happen. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Does any other member wish to speak? Councillor Spate.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. I would appeal to commissioners to, and it's something that I mentioned during the committee process, and I know that the borrowing rates are slightly different from how they were, like interest rates, when we utilised this scheme before. But we've got, you know, the best part of, I think, about £1.8 million worth of TA, temporary accommodation spend, in the general fund. And rather than make cuts across the board, across vital services, I would ask that the Commissioners consider allow us to borrow to purchase properties from the market to use as temporary accommodation. That would save that money because they could be mostly paid for out of housing benefit and therefore avoid a significant amount of cuts to this council. So I would like to, I know that, that there are limits to what commissioners and government can offer because of the amount of councils that are in this situation, but I would say, considering the special situation that Thurrock's in, that money is a significant saving that over years will, the value of that saving increases exponentially over the next few years. So I would appeal to commissioners to look at that once again, because that just seems like low-hanging fruit that we could be using rather than thinking of cutting, some of the cuts that we're going to be agreeing tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Spillman. Councillor Spate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I would just like to say that part of what Councillor Spielman said, I agree with. I look at this and it says it's a 30-year business plan. To me, it's a document that offers a surfeit of complacency and a complete lack of ambition. It also omits to give detail of some of the things that are going on, and indeed, the Assistant Director for Housing and Development and her Interim Assistant Director for Strategic and Corporate Finance know full well that I've shown a great deal of interest in schemes like the Fire Capital Scheme, which is part of what Councillor Spielman just alluded to. I have concerns, but I'm quite open to listening to an argument that's put forward. I don't really see any reference to that fundamental part of our future within this business plan. I also don't see, and this is where you talk about ambition, we brought in, and I've been privileged to sit on the panels, we brought in some very bright people into this council, some people who we're staking our futures on, and they have some great ideas, and I'm sure that they bring with them experience from other councils, and many other councils have great partnerships with housing associations that build properties, that manage properties, that look after properties. There is not one mention, as far as I can see it, and Councillor Snell will tell me if I'm wrong, that there's been any consideration even of looking at new partnerships. And as I say, I talk about a complete lack of ambition. Yes, we are, a rock in a hard place. Times are tough. Things are very difficult. But we must not give up. We must not seek innovation. And we must look at what other people are doing and where it works. And as I say, I have my reservations about FI. I'm assured by the directors it's a great thing. So I'll take them at their word at the moment because we've had long and detailed discussions. Housing associations, I've spoken to senior members within the council who see potential. This is a 30-year business plan. It's not even mentioned. So are we going to think about it in 30 years? I would just ask Councillor Snell if he really believes that this is a 30-year-old business plan, or is it just a snapshot in time of today?
Thank you, Councillor Spate. Councillor Howden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I thank Councillor Snell for the report. One of the elements that particularly concerns me within the HRA are some of the presumptions that we are making when it comes to the reprocurement of items like the repairs contract, running for 15 years, totalling well over £115 million. The reality is that the work in earnest on the scrutiny of this only began in May of last year. I would suggest that if you actually look at the timeline between scrutiny taking place and key trigger points having to go through Cabinet with regards to the reprocurement, it is virtually impossible to suggest that scrutiny is actually able to keep pace with that procurement exercise. So my concern is, within the HRA, can we stick with inside that £115 million borrowing envelope? And I know myself and Councillor Spate have mused whether or not it would be wiser to roll over the current arrangements for an additional period of time to allow additional work to take place on this. Another area within the HRA concerns me could become somewhat unstable is, Councillor Worrell alluded to the delivery of new council homes. We had a task and finish group looking at the council's internal capacity to deliver homes directly ourselves and also to nurture the private sector to deliver homes. I was concerned during our last task and finish meeting that we seem to have lapsed back to a stage where formal papers are not tabled. The updates were oral. This did not allow correct scrutiny of what was occurring. So again, it's an element within the HRA that is worrisome. Councillor Spate referenced fire capital. One of the areas that is bedeviling local government as a whole right now are the revenue pressures that are coming from homelessness. Now, Thurrock has done incredibly well. We are ahead of the game. We do not have the same situations that Hastings has, for example, where Hastings were talking about a 114 notice purely off the back of homelessness costs. That's because of how stock has, our own stock has grown. Councillor Spillman did a marvellous job procuring new homes at an even faster rate than he procured that wonderful new head of hair of his. But it has put us artificially ahead of the game, and we do need to be aware of the fact that whilst we are artificially ahead of the game because of how we have grown stock, that is something that currently reflects as positive, very much in the black within the HRA. I would suggest it is perhaps not in the black deliberately. It is in the black incidentally because we have had stock that we've been able to purpose for those homelessness, for temporary accommodation. So I think my particular ask to Councillor Snell and officers as these things go forward is consider the process that scrutiny has gone through, especially on the repairs contracts, especially on the deliverability of new council homes and new private homes, and reflect on whether or not we are giving adequate resources to scrutiny to go about this work, because the last thing we want within this 30-year business plan is to discover that some of the base assumptions in there were predicated on false assumptions.
Thank you, Councillor Howden. Councillor Polly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would echo a lot of what Councillor Worrell said, and I welcome some of the comments from Councillor Howden. Obviously, as a representative for the Bellis Ward, we had which is an area that was built as social housing effectively, and the community that has grown up there and exists there is quite embedded in the social housing background. We had a scheme quite recently that went to planning and was agreed for delivery of some council-owned properties to be built in the borough, which we now understand might be in jeopardy. That is a great concern to me, and I would absolutely urge the commissioners to look at that project. I know these are down to the finances and the situation that we're in, but the amount of community engagement that was done on that project, the amount of time that the officers spent speaking to individuals, the amount of hope that raised in the area. These are things that really concern me. These are not just bricks and mortars. These are people's livelihoods. These people that want to stay within the area and where their parents are, where grandparents can help with the raising of their grandchildren. And I may be a bit emotive on this, but it is something I'm really passionate about. And I do think if we're not delivering them, then we should put as much energy as we can into it to finding a way to deliver. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Polly. Councillor Redsill, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't want to just pick up on what Councillor Worrell said. I don't want to lose Blackshots at the moment, because I think it's something that we're doing very well with. I just wanted to give a praise to housing for all the hard work they have done in respect of Blackshots. We are moving very, very fast forward, so I would urge the commissioners to look at that. And I think we're not being very diverse. We're not looking out there at housing associations, which we should be using more of. We seem to have gone to a point in the council where we used to use them a lot and now we're not. So I think we've got to look. I think there is something being looked at now within housing, but I think we've got to be a bit stronger and look at things. I'm sure Councillor Pearce doesn't want to lose Tivot Avenue either. I think we can't leave the people that are, especially in Blackshots, are living in mould that we can't get rid of. You know, we've got children, we don't need to lose a child in those flats. So I think we've got to look at it in the respect of trying to bring other housing associations into Thurrock, and I think that, you know, that on that respect will work if we try and use other people. Just mentioning what was spoken about just now, Councillor Polly was quite earnest about what she wanted, and I think sometimes we're not freeing up our big houses for people who want bungalows, who want to stay in the area they're in. So we seem to build about 10 bungalows and they go. So I think we need to look at very many aspects of housing and what we are doing. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Redsill. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In terms of the delivery of social and affordable housing here in Thurrock, should we not be looking, and I think we've spoke about this before in various overview and scrutiny committees, such things as income strips, build to lease developer opportunities. Now, council have got land assets, I understand, that are going to be sold on the open market, and my initial concern was losing those assets to London boroughs and London boroughs building on our land assets, such as the industrial estate on Curzon Drive and the commercial yards as well that we own in Dock Road and Hume Avenue in Tilbury. Now, shouldn't we ideally be giving a look to a build-to-lease developer? Now, I see it as a win-win-win situation, because council would sell those land assets to those build-to-lease developers. The build-to-lease developers will develop the units that we require here in Thurrock, and on completion of delivering those units, they would be leased to Thurrock Council for, say, a 40 to 50-year period, and after the lease is finished, that they will be sold for a peppercorn amount back to Thurrock Council. Is that not a win-win-win situation? Shouldn't we be looking at build-to-lease developer opportunities where Thurrock Council don't have to at all put their hand in their pocket? They get money from the sale of the land. They effectively get council housing for the next 40 to 50 years. And at the end of it, we acquire the units. If there's 450 units, if there's 4,500 units, we acquire them. They then become council properties. Should we not be looking at that?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll try and answer some of those questions as this is under my portfolio rather than Councillor Snell, who's really just reporting on the budget, shall we say. Let's go back to build to lease. If using it as build to lease, we would still have to borrow. If what you're saying is selling the land to them, or giving them the land, then that's not helping us because we won't get the properties we need. But build to lease is something that I know the officers have had put forward to them and they are looking at. But to go back to this 30-year plan, Councillor Spate, you're dead right. There's not a massive amount in it because it is built on an assumption, the best assumptions, which are very difficult to do. And I think the report was tried to be put through to say, this is what we know we can do. We do not want to put something out there that is not possible. That's why the Blackshots and Teviot Avenue are specifically mentioned, because we are relatively confident that we can get that done, and that's purely through the HRA. They will be our properties. And off the top of my head, I think if we get both sites done, we gain around 100 and something properties. So it's a very, very worthwhile project, and that's why it's specifically in this plan. I've always found that the 30-year business plan, sometimes I sit there and it's sort of you laugh at it. It's, who can do 30 years? I mean, nobody can. So, but I wanted to make it clear to the officers that what they put in here is really what we think we can do. And at the moment, I think that's what they've done. Councillor Worrell, I agree with everything you said. The people of Thurrock deserve to have proper homes, warm homes, safe homes. But go back to what I said about this is a 30-year plan, and this is about all we can do. I'm sorry. I don't think there was any other points in there. If there is, I will obviously come back.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Snell, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, everybody, for your comments. I think Councillor Johnson answered some of those quite eloquently. A lot of the questions were actually outside of my portfolio. I just want to pick up on one absolutely outrageous statement that was made by Councillor Howden. I am pretty confident that I've seen him swap cards with the consultant, so I'm sure Councillor Howden will be visiting that consultant very soon. I'll say Councillor Wall was quite right. I mean, when she listened back to the ONS, this went through 2 ONSs. And, that was a time for people to ask questions. That's what ONS is for. And I want to make the point here, yet again, is that it's there for everybody to use. And, that's the time to ask the questions that have been asked here tonight, quite frankly. And they just weren't. So thank you, Councillor Wall, for highlighting that, because it's an important point. Other than that, I completely agree with what you said as well. And it's also quite encouraging, because it wasn't that long ago when all of us councillors, well, a lot of councillors, shall we say, were of the opinion that if something needed doing in Thurrock, it needs to be the councillor that does it. But that, quite clearly, judging on the comments tonight, is changing to, well, actually, what can we do in partnership with other people to get things to be done? And that's really the way we need to be going forward. And it's encouraging to hear members express that opinion too. With that, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. I'll now proceed to the recommendations. The Council approve. 1.1, the HRH revenue budget for 2024 to 2025, Table 1 and Appendix A. Councillor Worrell, are you with us? 1.2, the HRA 5-year capital programme for a total of £175.69 million, Appendix Table 3, Appendix C. Do members approve the recommendations 1.1 and 1.2? Would you raise your hands if you approve? Would you raise your hands if you're against? Would you raise your hands if you abstain? So I've got 3. Can you put your hands well up, Councillor Byrne? Thank you. The Council note 1.3, the HR 5-year revenue budgets for 2024 to 2025 to 2028 to 2029, Table 1 and Appendix A. 1.4, the HRA 30-year revenue budget for 2024 to 2025 to 2053 to 2054. 1.5, the 30-year capital programme from 2024 to 25 to 2053 to 2054, Appendix D. 1.6, the draft HRH reserves and balances for the 5-year plan, Appendix E. 1.7, the submission of 2 requests to the Secretary of State. The outcome of it will be reported to Cabinet and to Council. Do members note recommendations 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, 1.6 and 1.7? Would you raise your hands if you note them? Yes. Lovely, thank you. I will now go to item 17. It's the council tax base for 2024 to 2025. Councillor Snell, you're on again. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You must be getting a stiff neck. Keep looking over in this direction by now. Right, council tax base. There are 2 parts to this report, Madam Mayor. It sets out the number of properties within Thurrock that are chargeable for council tax and classifies them into Band D equivalents for budget setting purposes as determined by the Interim Chief Financial Officer. It also determines the collection fund balances for 23-24 and the distribution of those balances. For 24-25, the Interim Chief Financial Officer has set the number of Band D equivalents to 53,322, and it is to be noted that 70.3% of Thurrock properties are in Bands A to C. We are proposing that going forward, the Cabinet will be required to approve the council tax base before the 31st of January each year. The collection fund balances are as follows. Right, Madam, I'm just reading, make sure I get it in the right order. So the estimated balance at 31st of March 2024 for the council tax collection fund is in surplus of 326,924 before distribution to major precepting authorities. The allocation of the surplus to the 3 main precepting bodies in proportion to their precepts for 2023-24 is as follows. Thurrock Council, £272,910, Essex Police Authority, £40,193, and Essex Fire Authority, £13,821. The Business Rate Collection Fund is in surplus of 7.272 million, and the allocation of the surpluses to the 3 main precepting bodies are as follows. Thurrock Council, £3.563 million, Central Government, £3.636 million, and the Essex Fire Authority, £72,726. And with that, I'll leave it there for questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. Would any... Councillor Kent, sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The majority of this report is just a statement of fact, so you know, clearly we'll be supporting it. The only comment I would make is that it makes perfect sense to move back to the previous way that we used to do this with Cabinet looking at the base before we get to the council budget setting meeting.
Would any member like to speak on this report? Thank you. Councillor Snell, would you like to sum up? You have 2 minutes to speak. Thank you.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just go to the recommendations, please.
I will now proceed to the recommendations. 1.1, note that under existing delegated authority, the council tax base for 2024 to 25, calculated in accordance with legislation, has been set by the interim chief financial officer at 53,322 properties. Do members note the recommendation? Raise your hands. Yes, right. Anyone don't note it? No, that's lovely. Thank you. The council approves 1.2, the proposal that in future years Cabinet will be required to approve the council tax base and change the constitution accordingly. 1.3, the proposal that A, the estimated 31st of March 2024 balance of the council tax collection fund to be a surplus of 3,026,924 before distribution to major presetting authorities, and B, allocates the surplus to the three main precepting bodies in the proportion to their precepts for 2023 to 2024 as follows. Thurrock Council, 272,910 to Essex Police, 40,193 to Essex and Essex Fire Brigade, 13,821. Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, but each has an individual precept balance. 1.4, the proposal that A, the estimated 31st of March 2024, the balance of the business rate collection fund to be a surplus of 7,272,612 before distribution to central government and Essex Fire, County Fire, and B, allocates the surplus to the three main precepting bodies in the proportion set out in legislation. Firstly, Thurrock Council, 3,563,580, central government, 3,636,306, and thirdly, Essex County Fire, 72,726. Would you raise your hands if members approve the recommendation 1.2, 1.3 and 1.4? Thank you. Is there anyone who'd like to be against it? Raise your hands. No. Is there any abstentions? Sorry, Councillor Spate and Councillor Allen, did you approve? Yeah, I didn't see your hands. Thank you. Right. This isn't the long one, is it? No. Item 18, Councillor Snell. It's the council tax premium 2024 to 2025. You have 5 minutes to speak, Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report sets out each billing authority has the ability to charge a premium on council tax. I believe it's previously been up to 2 years, but now the legislation's changed, so we have the discretion to charge what we would like to charge. So what we are recommending is as follows. So we will charge a premium on empty properties. So properties empty after 12 months and up to 5 years, we're proposing 100% premium on council tax. Properties empty between 5 and up to 10 years, a 200% premium on council tax. And properties empty over 10 years, a 300% premium on council tax. We also are recommending that from the 1st of April 2025, a 100% council tax premium is charged in addition to normal council tax on properties classed as second homes. From 24-25, in the quarterly reports to Cabinet, On the outturn, there will be a clear and transparent report on the council tax performance, including additional income secured through the proposed changes to the premium. Based on the current number of empty properties, it is expected that this will generate £447,000 in council tax. Now, this proposal is really meant to, we don't want empty property. We don't want them sitting there for years and years not being used. So the purpose of this is to say, well, okay, you can leave them empty, but you're going to pay for that, or you can bring them back into use, which is ideally what we want. So we'll see how that goes, and obviously the figure generated in council tax will go up and down depending upon how this is taken up. So with that, I'll leave that there and open for questions.
Lovely. Councillor Kent, would you like to speak?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I echo much of that. I think these are sensible measures that we support, and I kind of agree with Councillor Snell that it's almost ideal if we never get a penny in from this. It will mean that all homes are being used. I would just float the question of how we're going to monitor whether properties are being actively marketed. I just think we need to cast an eye over that, and how we're going to measure a property undergoing major repairs. I just think we need to think through the detail. And the other one, I understand that social housing, be that council or a housing association, is also liable to this. So we have to kind of be careful when we get some of those long-term voids that we do unfortunately get from time to time.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Would any other member like to speak on this report? Councillor Spate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I absolutely see the validity in most of this recommendation. The area that does concern me is 1.2 second homes. In my professional capacity, I spend a lot of time at the moment dealing with areas in Devon and South Wales where the second homes thing is a really big issue. People buying holiday cottages at the expense of the local people, etc., and the knock-on effect of that. And I see there a really valid reason for it. We've got a year on this. I just wonder whether it might be better just to defer 1.2 for more thought, because I'm not sure that 100% council tax premium on second homes for people in Thurrock. The likelihood is going to be there are people who are coming here to work and be here on a Monday to Friday or a Monday to Thursday or whatever, and they'll be contributing to the wealth and economy of this borough by doing that. So I think it's a bit difficult to be punitive towards them. I also think there's a degree of hypocrisy in that we've had a significant number of senior officers and people coming to stay here in Thurrock from lovely parts of the country, and we've been welcoming them into Thurrock and putting them up, or they've been renting properties or whatever, because they're contributing to the wealth and fabric and improvement in Thurrock. And I just think, you know, we should be, if we're going to penalise them, penalise everybody. So I would just ask if it might be possible to defer this, because it doesn't come in until 2025, for a little bit more thought. I think it would be wise to do so. We're not Devon or Cornwall with Thurrock.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. Right, regarding the, after what Councillor Spate has said, I'm going to go back to the recommendations. Oh, sorry. Councillor Snell, would you like to sum up first? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, thank you for the broad support. And actually, I do take Councillor Spate's comments on board. I'm not entirely sure at this moment in time how many properties there would be classed as second homes in Thurrock, but I think that's a fair comment, and we should look at that before we go ahead with that. But otherwise, I think they're pretty good recommendations, and we should go ahead with the recommendations as are.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. In view of what Councillor Spate has said, and to give my voice a rest, I'm going to take it one by one. So that Council approves 1.1, that from the 1st of April 2024, a council tax premium is charged in addition to the normal council tax on long-term empty and substantially unfurnished properties as follows. Properties empty after 12 months and up to 5 years, 100% premium. Properties empty for 5 and up to 10 years, 200% premium. Properties empty over 10 years, a 300 premium. So could you put your hands up if you all agree with that one? Is there anyone against? Is there anyone that would abstain? Thank you, Council. Moving on to 1.2, that from the 1st of April 2025, 100% council tax premium is charged in addition to the normal council tax on properties classed as second homes. Would Council, if you agree, put your hands up? Yeah.
To be helpful, I think this is the one that this is the recommendation that Councillor Spate has moved an amendment to, and the amendment was that we defer a decision on this for further consideration.
That's why I'm taking them singly, and I was going to find if everyone agrees to it and not an amendment, then we would go with doing that. So hang on a moment. Right, members. Councillor Spate, would you like to put in an amendment to 1.2?
Indeed, I would, and I was trying to get... Absolutely, I'll put an amendment that we defer 1.2 for further consideration, and hope somebody would support that.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Spate. Has Councillor Spate got a seconder? Councillor Allen, I think, was first. So, Councillor Allen. So, on this, can all those who agree with the amendment put your hands up now? If anyone is in disagreement with it, can you put your hands up now? If anyone is going to abstain, can you put your hands up? No. So, at the moment, the amendment is that we wait and withdraw this until...
Yes, perhaps I could make a point of clarification.
Okay, so I'm going to actually ask, hang on, Councillor Allen, I'm actually going to ask the Chief Exec to make more clarified comment on it. Thank you. I know, Councillor, you've got your hand up, but let's get the clarification first. Thank you.
I just wanted members to be clear that in agreeing this amendment, it means that we are a further £50,000 in round terms short on the budget, and that will have to be added to the current gap that we've got to close by the 22nd of March, just to make everybody aware of that. Thank you.
So, with that clarification, do you think we ought to vote on it again? No, Councillor Spate. Stand up, put your mic on, and then I can hear.
But surely this is for 2025, so it doesn't affect this budget.
I'm going to ask the Chief Exec again to clarify.
Thank you for your assistance, Councillor Spate. The Section 151 officer has now clarified that you're correct. It will affect the budget gap for 25-26.
Thank you. So the amendment stands. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Oh, Councillor Duffin.
I just wanted a clarification that there's no sort of timeline for delivery, and the fact that we're pushing this, we don't have to give like a year's notice for it to come in, and there's any sort of consultation period. If we wait 6 months and we vote on this, then it's perfectly fine to roll it out on the proposed date, or are we, by postponing this decision, potentially excluding it in entirety from next year's budget? Does it need notice to roll out? Because if that's the decision we're making, that could potentially have long-term consequences.
Thank you. So I'm going to pause for a couple of minutes while they actually sort this out. Can they go to the loo? Actually, I'm going to suspend the meeting for 10 minutes so we can all have a comfort break. So hang on. Can you sit down for a minute? No? Can you sit down, Councillor Allen, just for a minute, and Councillor Byrne? Right, it's now 9:05, so I'll reconvene at 9:15. Thank you. I'm now going to, I appreciate the Chief Exec's had a word with the three leaders, and I'm now going to hand him over to you to explain it to the members. I think that's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. To be clear, in response to the question that was posed, in adopting the amendment, there is no impact in 24-25. If a decision was made during the course of this year, for instance, to then adopt the original recommendation, the impact will actually be in 26-27 because there has to be a year's notice and it would be brought in at the beginning of a financial year. So it has no impact on the budget that is being discussed tonight, but would have an impact on the budget 2 years down the line, in effect, depending on the decision you make at some later point. I hope that's clear.
Councillor Duffin, still got a problem?
So is that one where we as council want to potentially change the vote to go to implement it and then consider it, rather than the fact that we're delaying it now, we're costing a future budget just by delaying that? Would we be better proposing it and then we can continue reviewing it? And I guess it's easier to remove something than we can start giving that 12 months of legal notice.
I think I tend to agree with you, Councillor Duffin. So what I propose to do, I haven't asked, but I'm going to withdraw motion 1.2. Yeah? Do you all agree? Because then you can put it in at a later date without the 12 months.
I don't think you can do that, Madam Mayor.
Right. Apparently, I cannot rewind because we've done the vote anyway. I should have thought of just removing it in the first place, and then it wouldn't have been tied in with the 12 months. Right. Yeah. Council, can you be quiet? 1.3, that from 2024 to 2025, quarterly outrun reports to the Cabinet will include a clear and transparent summary on the Council tax performance, including additional income secured through the proposed changes to the premium. Do members approve recommendations 1.1 and then 1.3? 1.3. Oh, Councillor Duffin.
So can I just get clarification on it, that we've just thrown 50 grand down the drain and we're not readdressing this vote? So next month would still be within time frame to get it done. Okay, thank you.
So we're now voting on 1.3. Hands up all those who agree with 1.3. Hands up all of those who are against 1.3. Councillor Worrell. And have I any abstentions? No. Okay. Item 19, Local Council Tax Scheme 2024 to 2025. Councillor Snell, would you please introduce the report? You have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I shouldn't need 5 minutes. This is the Local Council Tax Scheme for 24-25. It's actually exactly the same scheme as we've been running since 2017-2018. A comprehensive review of the scheme has been undertaken within the current year and compared against other Essex and neighbouring authorities. In summary, the analysis shows that in comparison to the benchmark group, Thurrock's current scheme for working age claimants provides a mid-range level of support and drives comparatively high collection rates for the LCTS portfolio. The review also considered the potential financial impact of reducing the current maximum award levels from 75% to 70%. In summary, whilst theoretically this would have saved £332,000, the review concluded that a decrease of this nature could not be recommended at the current time, as it would increase the minimum amount of working age claimants were required to contribute by 20%, and this is before any increase in council tax charges. It would make the minimum contribution rate for working age claimants the third highest in Essex, and it would stretch a claimant's ability to pay and therefore put at risk any theoretical saving through unrecovered amounts and or increased demand for wider support. The report provides further details, but in essence it remains unchanged for 24-25. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. Councillor Kemp, would you like to speak?
Madam Mayor, we welcome the extension of the existing scheme and we welcome the full review to be carried out in year. And with that, we will be supporting this item.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Would any member like to speak on this report? Councillor Snell, would you now wish to sum up?
We just progress to the recommendations, please, Madam Mayor.
Sorry?
Can we just progress to the recommendations, please?
Thank you. I will now proceed to the recommendations that the Council approve. 1.1, the Council current local council tax support scheme for 2024 to 2025, which has been in place since 2017 to 2018, with no changes as detailed in section 3.1. Do we all agree? Great. No abstentions? No against? Right. 1.1, that the Council approve a full review of the scheme in 2024-25 and completed by autumn to enable inclusion within the budget setting process for 2025 to 2026 and to comply with the Commissioner's recommendations above. Are we all in agreement? Is there any abstentions or any against? Thank you. So I can take it now that we all agree, members, recommendation 1.1 and 1.2. Thank you. Yes. Revenue budget for 2024 to 2025, item 21. Allow Councillor Snell, would you like to introduce your report?
I think, Madam Mayor, this is a chance for me to have a rest and for the leaders to have their say for a change. Thank you.
Thank you. Leader, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As members are fully aware, the Council has had serious financial challenges over the last few years. We have to be aware of these challenges and we have to face them head on. We've had to make some tough decisions in this budget to secure a viable long-term future for Thurrock. We have made great progress in securing the viability of this council when you consider 2 years ago we were in a place where we did not know if Thurrock would be able to continue as a council. I want to thank officers for their time, effort and advice in helping to secure this budget. I know that it was a hard budget to work on, and I want to thank everyone who worked on putting it together. By supporting this budget today, all 49 members are taking responsibility for the future of this council. They are saying yes to securing a future of fiscal responsibility, and they are proving they have learned the lessons from the BVI and are willing to make the tough decisions that decades of different Thurrock administrations showed that they were unwilling to make. Thurrock has come a long way, and this should be applauded, and all members who have contributed to the positive development of Thurrock should be congratulated. It's only by gritting our teeth and making decisions that are challenging are we able to secure the future of Thurrock. Simply saying no and offering no alternative, as has happened in the past, can't happen again. We all have the responsibility to the residents of Thurrock to help deliver a well-run local authority. This budget has received more scrutiny than any in Thurrock's history, and I'd like to thank Councillor Kerrin for chairing all the extraordinary ONS meetings and all members who offered fair challenge and questioned the many parts of this budget. This again showed that we were learning the lessons from the BVI which have challenged the Council's scrutiny process. I personally thought that the 2 meetings were truly a good concept and should be done every year, although I might like to consider booking a day off work the next day. My administration is committed to making the correct decisions for a better future for Thurrock. These have not been easy, but we have secured the future of our libraries and saved our school crossing patrols in order to keep the services that matter to the residents of Thurrock. The council was asked to increase council tax by 10%. This was deemed unfair by myself and my administration, so Councillor Snell, Councillor Maney and I had a very challenging discussion with ministers, where I'm pleased to say he recognised that we were not prepared to increase the tax by 10%, and if this budget is passed this evening, council tax will be increased by 7.99%. This means that Thurrock will no longer have the lowest council tax in Essex, but we will in fact be the 3rd lowest. This was a hard decision that we've had to make to secure the viability of the council. A 7.99 increase protects the services for the most vulnerable, whereas increasing council tax by less puts those services at risk. And that is not something that I or my administration is willing to do. There's been much speculation on the budget, both in the media and on social media, and many were led to believe that there would be swinging cuts to services that our most vulnerable residents rely on. The budget before you this evening will ensure that children's services and adult social care are protected. We will not be losing even one children's social worker. Our grass will still be cut in our parks and open spaces, and our streets will be cleaned and our public bins will be emptied. In comparison to our nearest competitor council, with nearby unitary authorities, Thurrock will have a council tax that is lower than the average. This really highlights Thurrock's past inability to make difficult decisions since it became a unitary. The 2nd lowest council tax in the country was never where we should have been with the services that we provide. We continue to maintain a low council tax with this budget, but it is the acknowledgement that the record lows of the past were not sustainable. This budget does not solve all of our problems. There are still tough decisions to make in the future. My overriding priority with this budget is to protect the most vulnerable in Thurrock, and I do believe that we have achieved this. However, whilst this budget is a good step forward for a better future, there are more difficult and tough decisions to make in the future, and this budget does not make right all the wrongs of the past. This budget, I believe, is the right thing for the council to adopt. The administration has tackled our challenges and is committed to delivering a relatively low council tax as well as good services, particularly protecting the services that are used by the most vulnerable. This budget recognises the difficulties of the council's finances, but sets out a positive way forward for the next year. I would urge all 49 members to support this budget. Today is really not a day to play party politics, but a time to do the right thing for Thurrock and its residents. My administration has and will continue to tackle the many challenges that we face, and we are committed to delivering as low a council tax as possible, whilst also protecting services. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Kent. Councillor Kent, would you like to speak? You have 15 minutes to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And can I start by thanking you for your forbearance earlier in the meeting? I think we all wanted this evening to go as smoothly as possible, and a kind of late change to the traditional way of doing things here through a lot of us. So thank you for your forbearance. I just want to start by joining with Councillor Jeffries, actually, on the process that we've been through to get here this evening when we formally set the council's budget. Those two joint scrutiny committees were, I think, a real step forward. They were, despite the excellent chairing of Councillor Kerrin, very long, very arduous, and at times utterly chaotic. But they were a huge step forward, and every member in this chamber this evening has had every opportunity to have their say in the formation of the budget before us tonight, before it's got to this stage. It's clearly been a better, a more inclusive and a more transparent process than those that we have unfortunately grown used to over recent years. Now, we welcome that, and I just genuinely want to acknowledge it. To set a balanced budget this evening, the Cabinet has nodded through a package of savings that come to more than £19 million. And we heard a lot of talk from the Leader of the Council about securing services for the most vulnerable, protecting the most vulnerable. And yet they include cuts that will hit some of the most vulnerable in our community, scrapping the hardship fund, for instance, charging to get disabled youngsters to college, charging for dispersed alarms that help our vulnerable elderly live independently, and more besides that. Cuts that will hit the weakest, and cuts that frankly shame the Conservatives. We will also see fortnightly bin collections, an £80 charge for garden waste, and a huge range in a raft of fees and charges. These are cuts and charges that will hit every resident of Thurrock. There are, of course, savings included here that we unreservedly welcome. The reductions in spending on agency staff, improvements to the tradeway service, and entering into a business pooling arrangement. We were previously in a business rates pool, that brought in millions of pounds to this authority, and I'm still genuinely baffled as to why we haven't entered into a new arrangement before now, but welcome the fact that we are. But we will also see another punishing above the cap to council tax increase of 8%. And once again, it's the residents that will be paying the price of the Tory financial disaster. And it means the level of council tax has gone up by practically half since the Conservatives first formed an administration back in 2016. And the Band D council tax charge will pass £2,000 a year for the first time in Thurrock. And even with all that, what we have before us this evening isn't, frankly, proposals for a balanced budget. There is still that gap of some £850,000 to be identified by the 22nd of March. And I would ask the Leader, when he responds, to tell us how he proposes to plug that gap. Will he return to the closure of the Thameside? Will it be closing libraries? Will it be crossing patrols? The fact is, we just don't know, and the Leader needs to come clean on what more he's looking at. And even after all that, we will still need exceptional government support of £68.6 million in order to set a balanced budget. That, Madam Mayor, is the incredible scale of the financial catastrophe for which the Tories are responsible, and the consequences of which the people of Thurrock will have to live with through higher council tax and fewer and diminished frontline services for years to come. Tonight, although there is much that we really do strongly oppose in this budget, we accept that we must do the responsible thing and allow the budget to pass. To do anything else would risk turmoil, uncertainty and deeper government intervention. That's not something that we're prepared to do, Madam Mayor, so we shall therefore be abstaining and allow the Conservatives to have their budget. And let's be in no doubt, that's what it is, the Conservatives' budget. Madam Mayor, I'd now like to turn to the future. And the fact is that having divested the Council of the Tories' disastrous Toucan investment, at what appears to be a loss of about £250 million, we will not be able to set a budget without that exceptional government support in the lifetime of the MTFS that we agreed earlier. That's up to the year 2028-29. And this year, we're paying the equivalent of 138% of our revenue budget on servicing debt. Next year, that reduces to closer to 33%, and by 28-29, we will still be paying a quarter of our revenue on servicing this toxic Tory debt, and that just isn't sustainable. So we have to look at different ways of working, different ways of running the council and delivering council services. That means embracing a new operating model for the council and searching for real innovation. Innovation that really, once and for all, will tackle the issues of silo working, will embrace the opportunities afforded by things such as artificial intelligence and up-to-the-minute customer relationship management tools, meaning that we can put the resident at the centre of what we do, helping to cut down on waste and unnecessary duplication. And if we're going to be able to ensure a good level of services for all our residents, we have to accept that we just can't afford to do that in the traditional way. We generally think of resources in terms of money, but it has to be so much more than that. We have to harness the skills, the passions, the experience, the energy of the whole community, of businesses, the third sector, community groups and residents, so that working together, we will be able to not only ensure a good level of services, but we're able to start to tailor services more closely to the needs of our different communities, allowing us to ensure consistency across the borough, but not uniformity. And all of this has to be done at pace. And rather than be seen alongside next year's budget setting process, the new operating model and the budget must be seen as one and the same thing. And finally, Madam Mayor, we have to continue to rebuild the credibility of the council in the eyes of our residents, in the views of the commissioners, and in the judgment of government. And if we can do those things, we can start to have a different conversation with government, one where we can offer a different proposal around how we deal with the toxic level of debt that we will still have in 28-29, in a way that gives us a chance of being a self-sustainable council and leave intervention more quickly than looks likely at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Spate, would you like to speak, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've given a great deal of thought about what to say this evening that reflects not just my thoughts on this budget, but those of my independent colleagues. We are not a political party, and we are a collective of differing opinions. So what I am saying reflects my view, though it has been seen beforehand by my colleagues. How I vote will be my own choice. Colleagues may go a different way. But what I think is a commonality between us is that the recommendations before us are, in the main, the product of a fractured, broken council that has shown little by way of humanity and compassion in the way it has gone about the business of putting a budget together. Firstly, let me say on behalf of myself and colleagues, we have no issue with supporting a 2% increase for adult social care. If we have a concern, it is that that figure is not enough, nor does its ring fence stretch far enough. It should surround children's services as well. As for the rest, it's largely a matter of irrelevance. We have to set a budget by law and it has to balance, which is exactly what the highly paid number crunchers have put before us. As to its validity, I question it deeply. It is a fiscal plan created with all the finesse of a battlefield butcher rather than the precision of a surgeon trying to heal and piece together a wounded patient. It shows little humanity and it has little strategic value. I regard it as a mark in the road rather than a panacea aimed at progression. It's a budget of slash and burn, not of creativity. It does a job, but not a very good one. Of course, it's easy to be critical when you're not the one making the decision. So it behoves me to offer some thoughts about what the budget planners could have done. They could have shown vision and talked to prospective stakeholders and investors, to housing associations, for example. They could have laid foundations that would have made an immediate financial implication. They could definitely have questioned more. I look every month with ever-increasing anguish at the what we spent online pages. I see not just profligacy, but a huge lack of quality control. Buyers of services opt for the cheapest cut. So I go back to my butcher analogy. A good butcher may charge you more at the outset, but what you were served up with will last longer, feed more, and end up being much greater value for money. We continue to approach procurement with the belief that the longer a contract is, the better value the council will get. There is no guarantee that that equation works. And as we have seen from our rising cost experience, I think the spreadsheet of damning invoices proves that it doesn't work. So for me, this is a poorly conceived, badly thought out, mere scratching of numbers by pen pushers, albeit very expensive ones. Its only merit is getting us past a 31st of March milestone. The statement earlier this evening from Councillor Snell about a budget which moved somewhere in the region of 1.5 million between the 14th of February and today just shows how much of this is all guesswork. But let's look forward. On the 1st of April, work needs to start on a new strategic humanitarian budget based on the needs of the people in this borough, not a group of non-invested accountants trying to make an arbitrary set of numbers add up. I can't support this year's budget personally, but then I have the luxury of being able to make a protest vote. Colleagues on other benches do not have that, and I respect their position. I'm sure this budget will pass without my support, but then let's consign it to theoretical history and start again on a better one.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. I've already had Councillor Spillman wishing to speak, and after that, if anyone else would like to speak.
Thank you very much. I must say I am pleased with the decision on the Labour benches. I think it's the only responsible thing. I think you have to be financially illiterate to not pass this budget. We know the scale of the problem that we face. I will take umbrage with a couple of points made by the Leader of the Opposition. To say that these savings were nodded through by Cabinet, it contradicts his own statement that we all sat down and went through all of those savings in 2 meetings. So it's not the case they were nodded through. Everyone had a say in those savings, and it's a great process. And I join with him in saying how much better it is than previous years. We can't go through a budget line by line on a council evening. It's completely impractical. So to have that meeting, and the spirit in the meeting was pretty good as well. Another thing that I will take umbrage with is, you know, this administration's made a number of mistakes, but to call it the Conservatives' disastrous token investment does somehow contradict the findings of the BVI, which found that the investment was signed off by one of his predecessors and their deputy. And I can confirm, it's in the BVI, John, yeah? It's in the BVI, yeah? So, and I can confirm from my time as leader of the independent group that the following leader of the Labour Party in CSR meetings never raised any issues with the token investment whatsoever. So I must correct you on that. Another point I have, and it is of concern, I mean, I am a man who doesn't mind a flutter from time to time, and there is a fair chance that the benches opposite will be in charge next year. It's a possibility. You know, it's probably, you know, that if you were to follow the odds, you'd probably be favoured. But that means that you've got to have a plan, you've got a vision, you've got to have an idea of what you're going to do. Now, you say you disagree with a lot of these cuts, but there's no alternative proposals from you whatsoever. Now, in Southend, a few days ago, a coalition of Labour, Liberal Democrats and Independents put forward significant amendments to the Conservative budget. It was successful. They actually made the effort. Now, you're going to be in charge next year, potentially, and I hope that you're better prepared than you were for this evening. Regarding my main concern is the future. Now, I worry that there is a lack of joined-up strategic thinking about the situation that all local authorities find themselves in at the moment. And at the moment, we have councils across the country setting budgets to survive for 1 year. Well, to survive for 1 year. And a lot of these councils, on paper, don't look like they can survive for year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, and we're in that number. So I do think that we need a lot more guidance from Thurrock and a lot more guidance from Westminster as to what the end game of this is. Because we cannot cut at the current rate and raise taxes at the current rate and meet that gap. We need a wider thinking, and we need to have a solution to this problem, which is systemic across local government.
Thank you, Councillor Spillman. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak?
Yes, please. Madam Mayor, thank you. I've got it on here. From the business world where I come from, you would never ever go out with a begging bowl to your customers and ask them to bail you out because of your financial failings. If I'd seen that you'd opened every cupboard and looked in every drawer, I might think different, but we are still pouring cash into pet projects at the expense of essential services. For example, we are still mailing out invoices, wasting time on time, postage, stationery and labour. This is despite the facts show that the biggest reason for unpaid debts in the UK are for mailed out through the door invoices. Reception turn away high-value planning checks. We actually turn away money from our front door when surely everybody knows that cash flow is the #1 priority. We have purchased bus shelters where there are no buses. We have purchased advertising totems for a station that is not there. We've even purchased footfall recording equipment that remains in the boxes that it come in, now sitting in the manager's van, and it will never be used because an ill-thought-out project is on protected land. That, in what's in the manager's boxes, costs thousands. Have we not learned anything? When we fail on the smaller issues, we ultimately fail on the much larger issues. Our Stamford Station is a prime example of that. We are throwing away good money after bad. While we continue to wear our public sector hats and refuse to accept private sector principles in this business, the recovery will be much slower than it needs to be. How can we go to our residents again when you are repeatedly failing to keep your own house in order?
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Redsall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be voting for the council tax and the budget. It's good that we've all had our say. I thank Councillor Kerrin for those meetings because we at least got to know quite a bit about asking questions which we needed to ask. I just want to ask the leader with the brown bins. If there is a good take-up of the brown bin, is there a good chance that next year you might be able to lower the brown bin charge? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Redsall. Is there any other member wishing to speak? No. Councillor Jeffries, the leader, would you like to sum up, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I'd like to say I agree entirely with what the Leader of the Opposition said about the workings of the Council, and it should be becoming more of an enabling Council. And you'll be pleased to know that there is work taking place at the moment, at pace, trying to bring about those changes. I agree entirely with what Councillor Spillman said, and that was, on one hand, you're saying that these budget proposals were nodded through by Cabinet, but then you also praised the fact that we had the 2 ONSs. And on that subject, I think you had the 2 ONSs, but there were other meetings with people, with councillors having the opportunity to question the budget. This budget does protect the most vulnerable in our communities. I've said that repeatedly, and I wouldn't be putting my name to something that wasn't protecting the most vulnerable. And as I said in my speech, you mentioned libraries and school crossing patrols. We have protected those. They are still there. Libraries will stay open, and our children will be safely cross the road. I am disappointed that neither political party have come forward with an alternative budget. One's going to actually abstain. I don't know what the others are going to do. I'm not quite sure they're going to vote against, abstain, and probably make up their mind when it comes to it. But no one has put forward an alternative budget. Time and time again, you were offered the opportunity to put forward alternative budgets with other ideas, but you haven't done it. And tonight, I've not heard one opposition councillor come forward with any decent proposal that we could listen to and use as an alternative. What I have heard is a councillor talking about things that were bought years ago that certainly wasn't bought anyone within this administration, and it's that kind of thing we've been trying to put right. Councillor Redsall, with regard to brown bins, I think just like any charges and fees that we do, they're always reviewed every year, and I would love to say yes, they'll come down in price, but I mean that is something that we'll review in 12 months' time when the system has been up and running for a period of time. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Jeffreys, thank you. Right, in accordance with the council procedure, Rule 20.6, we're required to hold a recorded vote on elements of this item. It is proposed that we undertake the vote as follows. We will firstly vote to note recommendation 1.1. We will take a recorded vote on recommendation 1.2. We will further note recommendation 1.3. Recommendation 1.4 will be another recorded vote. We will then vote to approve recommendation 1.5 on its own before voting to approve recommendations 1.6 and 1.7 en bloc. Finally, I will ask the Chamber to note recommendations 1.8, 1.9 and 1.10 en bloc. For each recorded vote, Democratic Services will read out the name of each member and will ask that you use your microphone and clearly indicate whether you are voting in favour, against or abstaining. Recommendation 1.1 is to note the following recommendation. Council is asked to note the statutory section 25 report of the S151 officer shown earlier on this agenda when considering this report and in determining A, the proposed budget for 224 to 225. The level of reserves are set out in section 113. Do members note recommendation 1.1? Can you raise your hands? There's no one against it that's not going to notice it, and there's no abstentions. Recommendation 1.2 will be a recorded vote and ask the Council to approve the 224-25 budget to enable the Council tax requirement for 2024 to 2025 to set at 91 million to 66 million as Section 5 at 7.99% increase on the 2023 to 2024. Can I ask Democratic Services now to undertake the vote service? So when Matthew is doing this, I need you to clearly say in favour, against or abstain. Thank you, members. Over to you.
Councillor Abbas. For. Councillor Allen.
Against.
Councillor Anderson.
Against.
Councillor Deborah Arnold.
For.
Councillor Paul Arnold.
For.
Councillor Byrne.
Against.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Cecil.
Abstain.
Councillor Chukwa.
Abstain.
Councillor Collins.
For.
Councillor Cockshall.
For.
Councillor Duffin.
Against.
Councillor Fish.
Abstain.
Councillor Gledhill.
For.
Councillor Green.
Abstain.
Councillor Howden. Councillor Hartstein.
Abstain.
Councillor Hooper.
Abstain.
Councillor Hurrell.
Abstain.
Councillor Jeffreys.
For.
Councillor Johnson.
For.
Councillor Kelly.
For.
Councillor Cathy Kent.
Abstain.
Councillor John Kent.
Abstain.
Councillor Kerrin.
Abstain.
Councillor Lydiard.
Abstain.
Councillor Little.
For.
Councillor Ben Maney.
For.
Councillor Jackie Maney.
For.
Councillor Massey.
Abstain.
Councillor Morris Cook.
Abstain.
Councillor Muldowney.
Abstain.
Councillor Onanaji. Councillor Panjala.
Abstain.
Councillor Pearce.
For.
Councillor Piccolo.
For.
Councillor Polly.
For.
Councillor Raper.
Abstain.
Councillor Redsell.
For.
Councillor Rigby.
For.
Councillor Salmons.
Abstain.
Councillor Shinnock.
Abstain.
Councillor Snell.
For.
Councillor Spate.
Against.
Councillor Spillman.
For.
Councillor Tandy.
For.
Councillor Watson.
Abstain.
And Councillor Worrell.
Abstain.
Thank you, members. If you can just wait, Democratic Services just count it up and I'll tell you in a minute. Yes, the CEO will be reading this out, if you're all ready.
With regard to the recommendation, there are 23 votes for, 5 against and 20 abstentions.
Thank you, Chief Exec. Recommendation 1.3 is to note the Council Tax Resolution 2024-25 as set out in Appendix 2, which shows that the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner has increased council tax for B and D bands, property to £246.42 per annum at 6% increase on 23-24 for Essex Police, precept 82,062. So, yeah, and a 3% increase on 23-24 for the Essex County Fire precept. Do members note recommendation 1.3? Thank you. Is there any not going to note it? No. Recommendation 1.4 to be a recorded vote and ask the council to... Councillor Piccolo.
Madam Mayor, just a point of order. I don't know whether or not it's pertaining to this meeting, but I just realised we've gone past 9:30 and there wasn't a request for an extension. So I'm concerned that if there hasn't been an extension granted, that any further debate in actual fact is legal. So I propose now, if it's acceptable, that we extend the meeting until...
Thank you, Councillor Piccolo. Actually, it's probably my fault because I should have remembered to extend it. Are you all in agreement with extending it? Because this is important. Yes, Councillor? Yes, Leader. Thank you. Recommendation 1.4 will be recorded vote and ask Council to approve that members work with officers to identify the full 1.7 million in additional savings for the 22nd of March 2024. Potential actions are presented in Table 18. Can I ask Democratic Services to undertake the recorded vote, please, and I'll require councillors to either say for, against or abstain, please.
Councillor Abbas. For. Councillor Allen.
Abstain.
Councillor Anderson.
For.
Councillor Deborah Arnold.
For.
Councillor Paul Arnold.
For.
Councillor Byrne.
Abstain.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Cecil.
Abstain.
Councillor Chukwa.
Abstain.
Councillor Collins.
For.
Councillor Cockshall.
For.
Councillor Duffin.
Abstain.
Councillor Fish.
Abstain.
Councillor Gledhill.
For.
Councillor Green.
Abstain.
Councillor Howden. Councillor Hartstein.
Abstain.
Councillor Hooper.
Abstain.
Councillor Hurrell.
Abstain.
Councillor Jeffries.
4.
Councillor Johnson.
4.
Councillor Kelly.
4.
Councillor Cathy Kent.
Abstain.
Councillor John Kent. Councillor Kerrin.
Abstain.
Councillor Lydiard.
Abstain.
Councillor Little.
4.
Councillor Ben Maney.
4.
Councillor Jackie Maney.
4.
Councillor Massey.
Abstain.
Councillor Morris Cook.
Abstain.
Councillor Muldowney.
Abstain.
Councillor Onanaji.
4.
Councillor Panjala.
Abstain.
Councillor Pearce.
4.
Councillor Piccolo.
4.
Councillor Polly.
4.
Councillor Raper.
Abstain.
Councillor Redsell.
4.
Councillor Rigby.
4.
Councillor Salmons.
Abstain.
Councillor Shinnock.
Abstain.
Councillor Snell.
4.
Councillor Spate.
Against.
Councillor Spillman.
4.
Councillor Tandy.
4.
Councillor Watson.
Abstain.
And Councillor Worrell.
Abstain.
Thank you, councillors.
The vote on the recommendation is as follows. 24 votes for, 1 against, 23 abstentions.
Thank you, councillors. Recommendation 1.5 is to approve the 224-25 budget based on the estimated financial deficit to be funded by capitalisation direction of £68.6 million. Do members approve recommendation 1.5? Is there any abstentions? Is there anyone against? Can you keep your hands up so we can see? Right, thank you. 1. Do members, I've asked you that, recommendations 1.6 and 1.7 are to be approved and will be voted en bloc. 1.6, the submission of business cases by services to secure approval to utilise budgets earmarked for the contract inflation use of contingencies and budgets earmarked for pressures. Section 10, Table 21. For approval by the Chief Finance Officer and Finance Commissioner in conjunction with the portfolio holder for finance, portfolio holder for human resources and payroll to allow in-year budget adjustments. 1.7, the submission of a spending plan by services before the newly announced additional grant funding for social care can be utilised, which is 1.4 million. This will require approval by the Chief Finance Officer and the Finance Commissioner in conjunction with the portfolio holder for children and housing to allow in-year budget adjustments. Do members approve recommendations 1.6 to 1.7? Is there any abstentions? Is there any disagreement? 1. Thank you. Recommendations 1.8, 1.9 and 1.10 are to note and will be voted en bloc. 1.8, the savings of 18.2 million as identified in the budget were approved at Cabinet on the 10th of January 2024 and the 21st of February 2024. 1.9, the dedicated schools grant settlement for 2024-25 and the Thurrock allocation of 61.6 million as set out in section 11. 1.10, the continued use of measures to control expenditure as set out in section 14. Do members note recommendations 1.8, 1.9 and 1.2? Is there any abstentions? Is there anyone against? Thank you. Right. Item 22, Treasury Management Mid-Year Report. Councillor Snell.
Madam Mayor, may I just say something? I don't wish to get up and just walk out without explaining that the reason I'm not feeling very well. I've been off sick, as you know, so I'm just like to walking out because I'm feeling ill, not because of any other reason. Thank you very much.
It's noted and we wish you well, Councillor Collins.
Thank you.
Right. Item 22, Treasury Management Mid-Year Report. Councillor Snell, would you please introduce the report? You have 5 minutes to speak. Thank you, Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an update on the Council's Treasury management position for the first half of 23-24, based on the strategy approved on the 1st of March 2023, and sets out the parameters within which officers can work to manage the Council's TM functions and cash flow. Appendix 1 sets out the performance for 6 months to September 23. Debt has reduced by 100 million net, which is due to a significant reduction in borrowing to fund capital and day-to-day treasury function with lower cash balances than previously. That's 40 million down from 80 million. Debt is forecast to reduce further in the second half of the year due to capital receipts from sale of assets and investments and reducing borrowing requirements. The fundamentals of the strategy remain unchanged. There's a debt reduction strategy now in place. New borrowing will be minimised. A new disinvestment strategy is now in place to dispose of all non-cash investments and any assets held for operational purposes which are no longer required. All proceeds of sales will be applied to reducing debt. A reduction in capital investment financed by borrowing, and there are more highlighted in the report. But I need to say a word or two about breaches in counterparty limits. The DMO £5 million limit was breached 52 times, and utilising Link TM services were breached a further 57 times. This process has now ended. I would just like to say a little bit on that, is that the DMO itself, which is the Debt Management Office, is probably the best place to put excess money. Where we got a £5 million limit from, I'm not sure. The Chief Finance Officer couldn't find out where that came from, but we're going to be looking to see if we can increase the limits, but it is a safe place to put our money. But as I say, that function and that behaviour has stopped for the time being. With that, I'll go to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. Councillor Kent, do you wish to speak? You have 4 minutes in which to do so. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, we will be supporting the recommendations, as Councillor Snell has said, removing the limit on amounts that could be placed with the Debt Management Office, which is actually an arm of HM Treasury, is eminently sensible. On minimum revenue provision, I think we discussed that previously tonight, and I think all members have sought and been given assurances that we are doing the right thing.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak? Thank you. Councillor Snell, do you wish to sum up? You have 2 minutes in which to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I've nothing further to say, just proceed to the recommendations.
I will now proceed to the recommendations that the Council agrees the following amendments to the 2023-24 Treasury Management Strategy, that there is a revision of the counterparty... Sorry, someone shout. There is a revision to the counterpart...
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I think you read out the wrong recommendations.
Sorry.
Madam Mayor, I think you're reading out the wrong set of recommendations.
Councillor Massey, is number 22 and it is the right recommendations. I just had clarity. So, that there is a revision to the counterparty limits in that the investments placed with the debt management officers are changed from 5 million to unlimited amounts. 2, amend the minimum revenue provision policy to revert back to option 1 in respect of supported capital expenditure in line with the statutory MRP guidance. Do members agree? Is there anyone abstaining? Is there anyone against? Thank you. Item 23, Treasury Management Strategy 2024 to 2025. Councillor Snell, would you please introduce it?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And yes, I was going to introduce this one. The Council is required to approve a capital and treasury management strategy before the start of each financial year. This Treasury Management Strategy sets out the parameters for the Council's planned Treasury activity during 24-25, under which the Treasury team will manage activity. The strategy reflects the Council's proposed capital programme from 2024-25 to 2028-29, as set out in a separate report on the agenda. This is quite an in-depth paper, so I won't go over all of it, but I will speak to sections 9 and 7 relating to MRP policy and the borrowing strategy, respectively. Madam Mayor, section 9 details our MRP policy. Following intervention, the Council had to review its MRP policy to ensure prudent provision is made in accordance with the statutory requirements and guidance and to implement a debt reduction policy. Regulation 27 of the Local Authorities Capital and Finance England Regulations of 2003 requires local authorities to charge a revenue account a minimum revenue position MRP for that year. The MRP is an annual amount set aside from the general fund to meet the cost of capital expenditure that has not been financed from available resources, namely grants, developer contributions, for example, Section 106 monies, revenue contributions, earmark reserves or capital receipts. In setting an MRP level, which the Council considers prudent, guidance states that the aim is to ensure that the debt is repaid over a period commensurate with that over which the capital expenditure provides benefits to the Council. The table at 9.9 sets out 4 possible options for calculating MRP, and the Council will have reference to those when setting its MRP going forward. There is a lot more detail in the report, and I know you've all read it, so I'll move on to section 7, the borrowing strategy. Under the revised version of the Prudential Code, SIPFA has reinforced its definition of borrowing in advance of need. This concept prohibits councils from borrowing prior to cash being required and then invested purely to generate a financial return. There are some exceptions. If it makes economic sense to convert internal borrowing to external borrowing to take advantage of beneficial interest rates, or if cash is required for liquidity purposes to manage cash flows to meet current obligations. The 2021 Prudential Code clarifies that all debt for yield activity is considered as borrowing in advance of need, as borrowing to undertake a commercial investment does not meet one of the exceptions, nor does it meet any service objective. Again, there's a lot more in the report, but that's worth highlighting because that's something we were doing that we're not going to be doing anymore. So I think that's worth pointing out. But with that, I shall open to questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And can I start, I think, by thanking Councillor Snell. It's a bit of a mammoth shift, and he's managed to keep both calm and placid, as always, so congratulations. Madam Mayor, we will be agreeing to this strategy tonight. I think many of the issues that are set out within this report have been well rehearsed this evening already, so I won't take up any more time.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Is there any other member who would like to speak on this? Hang on, I'm getting there. Councillor Snell, would you like to sum up now?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kent, for your kind words. It's yeah, it is a marathon session, and I don't think I've ever drunk quite so much water at a council meeting before, although I wish it was something a little bit stronger, but perhaps next time. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to go straight to the recommendations, please.
Thank you. I will now proceed to the recommendations. The Council approve 1.1, the proposed Treasury Management Strategy for 2024-25. 1.2, the proposed MRP policy for 2024-25 as set out in section 9. 1.3, the proposed borrowing strategy as set out in section 7. Do members approve recommendations 1.2, 1.1 and 1.3?
Agreed.
Is there anyone who doesn't agree? Is there any abstentions? Thank you, members. The council note 1.4, the requirement within the Prudential Code 2021 for quarterly reporting on the Council's Treasury management activities. These reports will be presented quarterly during the year. Do members note recommendation 1.4? Thank you, members. Item 24. Questions from members. Members' questions can be found on page 37 to 38 of the agenda. Are you okay? Is something wrong? I can hear some funny noise. Sorry. I would ask those members who have submitted questions to please read out their questions when asked to do so. There were no questions to the leader and only 2 questions to portfolio holders. Question 1 from Councillor Byrne to Councillor Maney. Councillor Byrne, will you stand and read out your question as set out on page 37 of the agenda? Thank you, Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I raised this question, I didn't know that Councillor Bigelow had put in a motion, so I will leave that to the motion to highlight the Conservative embarrassment and appalling project management.
Councillor, I asked you to read out your question, please.
I will leave it to Terry Piccolo.
Right, well, in all the hassle, I couldn't hear what you were saying. You have to speak a lot clearer. Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Question 2 from Councillor Jackie Maney to the Councillor Carter, please. Councillor Maney, please read out your question as set out on page 37 of the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We heard at a recent overview and scrutiny reports of children having to attend schools in the cold marquees. As the portfolio holder, would you like to set the record straight and update us on the temporary buildings that have been built in light of the change on guidance surrounding RAC?
Councillor Carter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Maney, for your question. To go into the details, first of all, Thameside have used a marquee for their breakfast club so that they can continue to offer that service as some of their building was affected by RAC. No student has ever been taught in any marquee across Thurrock, and when I visited the Thameside marquee, I found the heating in it very nice, and it was kept warm behind the double glazing. Other schools have used the marquees to continue with the festive activities over the Christmas period, and they have enjoyed these. And on top of this, temporary buildings have been installed in St Clair's, and they are very impressive and are very big size. I know there is a councillor in here who lives very close to them and has seen the size of them themselves, but thank you very much.
Councillor Maney, do you want to ask another question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for that answer, Councillor Carter. What work is being carried out on affected schools?
Councillor Carter.
Well, we've received fantastic news on the 8th of February, actually, that St Clair's, Arthur Brugler, Corringham and East Tilbury have been granted permission from government for the Department of Education for rebuild, and Thameside will be provided with a grant allocation for work to remove RAC on a smaller scale.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Councillor Maney, do you want to propose?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of Children's ONS pushed for visits to the school. Did they do these and were they satisfied with what they saw?
Councillor Carter.
Yes, all members of Children ONS were invited to attend, and Councillors Panjala and Cecil took them up and have not raised any concerns. So I don't believe anyone has any concerns, and they were, like me, very happy with what they saw. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Item 25, reports from members representing the Council on outside bodies. Does any member who represents the Council... Excuse me, members. Does any member who represents the Council on outside bodies wish to present a report? Each member will get 4 minutes. Is there anyone wishing to report anything? No? Thank you. Item 26, minutes of committees. These are listed in the agenda on the contents page. Item 27, motion update report. This report can be found on page 39 to 42 of the agenda and is for information on status of motions. Councillor Redsill, you have indicated you'd like to speak about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In October, I put a motion to, in October of last year, for a task force to be set up on the issue of parking outside schools. It's now been 4 months and nothing has happened. My motion was fully debated and attracted cross-party support. I was told yesterday that nothing will be done until June. This is not acceptable. The BVI was clear that there has been a failure in governance in the council. The disregard to my motion shows that that is what has happened. If the task force had been set up now, or then, a few months ago, we probably would have been come to a conclusion by now. I wish to place on record my disgust at the lack of response to for a mandate by this chamber. I was called today to an apology, so I'm hoping that this comes through and it doesn't happen again. This is terrible to think that this was 4 months ago that we put this in. Had a good debate within the council, really good debate, and it's just not moved on. And I find that deplorable. I hope this doesn't happen to anybody else with a motion. I think I put a motion in 2 years ago for a wood, and nothing's been done about that one either. So I just hope this really doesn't happen to anybody again. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Redsill. Councillor Spate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we were, both Joy and myself were not allowed the opportunity to speak at the last full council meeting for some bizarre reason, I share her concern about the disrespect shown to members. But there you go. My concern is the motion that was brought forward by this chamber with regard to an independent investigation into all aspects of our planning service and in particular the local plan. Now, everyone in this chamber will be well aware of what has happened recently. They'll be aware, I'm sure, of the closure of a significant police investigation because they were unable to guarantee that they would be able to reach a prosecution. That does not mean that what was alleged to have happened didn't happen. It means there is knowing and proving being two separate things. And the police investigation, I believe, is flawed. But that's the way things are these days. Sometimes plugs get pulled, things get stopped for all sorts of machinations and reasons. But it does clear the way now, and there should be no further delay for this council to put together a thorough, independent investigation into the planning department, as was outlined in my motion, all the specific things that were asked for. We really have got a major, major problem. And until we clean house by having this independent inquiry and vindicating the concerns and fears of a number of people, then we all sit in the shade of something that is really obnoxious, and we must sort this out. Those of you who follow local media will know this has been raised at the very near the knuckle, as you might say, as to allegations that have been made. That some of those are substantiated, a lot of them have evidence, and it's time that evidence was put before a committee or a group of people or an investigator or whatever and looked into, because we have been blighted in this borough. It's stopping us going forward, and it needs to end now. And I call on the officer cohort, the senior officer cohort. This has been sat here since September. Okay, you had the PAS review, which was pretty damning, and it itself said, actually, there are a number of unusual incidents that it's beyond our remit to investigate. So somebody's got to investigate them, and we need to get cracking as soon as possible, and further delay will not be tolerated.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. Motion one, Councillor Piccolo, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm conscious of the time, and I would like to give this motion the benefit for having a full debate. So on that, and also regarding the 151 officer's comments, I'd like to withdraw the motion now, but resubmit it for next month's meeting once we'll have more clarity.
Thank you, Councillor Piccolo, and your comments been noted. This now concludes the business of the meeting for this evening, and excuse me, councillors, haven't declared it closed yet. I now declare the meeting closed. Please can I remind members to take all the rubbish home, use the bins near the door, and I close this meeting at 10:30. And if anyone would like to join me in the chamber, in the parlour, you are welcome to do so. Councillors, can you wait until I've stood up? Thank you.